It's always when my sinuses start acting up. Okay.
They know.
Mm-hmm.
They always know.
It's like school picture day. That would always happen. Always be my worst allergy days. I'd be sneezing up a storm.
Yeah.
Go in, get my picture, big red nose from from all the sneezing and all. It's like, oh, how does it always know? Hello everyone, and welcome to Let's Go to the Ring, where we take a look at the good old days, and not so good old days, of World Championship Wrestling, series by series. I'm your host, Bob Moore, and I'm here with Pro Podcasting Illustrated's 2019 Podcaster of the Year, Alec Bridgen.
It's an honor to be nominated.
And Pro Podcasting Illustrated's 2019 Most Popular Podcaster of the Year, Matrix Mullins.
I'm only popular because all my friends are made from Play-Doh.
Okay.
That would explain a lot.
Yeah.
They smell great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten a real insight into something that I'm not sure I would have preferred to get an insight into, frankly. Tonight, we're taking a look at Starrcade 95, the World Cup of Wrestling. A word before we begin on a couple of points. First, this Starrcade rather frequently turns to Japanese stereotypes in both commentary and angles. It can be uncomfortable or even offensive. I'm going to call out one pre-match segment in particular when we get to it, but just bear in mind there's a lot of jokes and moments on this show that just aren't really well thought out in this Starrcade. And it's a reminder that wrestling sometimes plays to some pretty bad tropes. Another example of the "they're different, so boo them" mentality. It's impossible to escape on this one. Please do keep that in mind if you're making the choice about whether to watch this or not. This is a very big negative about this Starrcade.
Won't get into the whole thing. There's a whole sort of debate going on right now with a lot of stuff. Friends being the one that's sort of the focal point for all this. This whole thing of people rediscovering things after 20, 25 years and going, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like whether or not you should be allowed to be bothered by it. Even if you lived through it like we did, I'm like, I feel like I should be allowed to. I saw it both times, but apparently some people think I'm not supposed to remember how things are back then. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
With Netflix and the access to, legacy or, older shows, sometimes while you're watching a show that you had fond memories of, it won't ruin the show for you, but you definitely won't appreciate it like you did just because you're like, why did I laugh at that? Or,
yeah,
maybe I just, I know that's the character or the archetype they're playing, but I don't know. It doesn't really fit with how I feel about things now.
Yeah. And our second note. This is our first show of many to feature Chris Benoit. Now, Benoit is going to be featured on WCW shows from 1995 until 2000, when he and several others left for the WWE. He will also show up on a few shows in 1992 and 1993 in other series. In 2007, Chris Benoit murdered his third child, Daniel, and his wife, Nancy Benoit, formerly Nancy Sullivan, who portrayed Woman in WCW and was married to Kevin Sullivan from 1985 through 1997. Chris Benoit then committed suicide. There will be uncomfortable moments during Benoit's appearances, most notably a storyline running from 1996 to 1997, in which Nancy is involved in a feud between Chris Benoit and Kevin Sullivan. We are still going to discuss those moments, but let me be clear. Our opinions about that storyline regard only the television storyline itself, and should not be taken as judgment or opinions of the actual people involved. Similarly, our discussions regarding Chris Benoit overall reflect only his performances as a character in WCW, not Chris Benoit as a person. Our sympathies are with those affected by the 2007 tragedy, and no disrespect is intended from our discussions.
I mean, yeah, it's a weird thing for me because I started watching wrestling in 2000, or really restarted watching wrestling, and I discovered him when he started in WWE, like right after he leaves these shows, basically, up and through till it happened. So yeah, it hit me pretty badly. I'm still not really sure how I feel about the whole thing.
Yeah,
I have a lot of mixed emotions about it, and how I can sort of reconcile the person and the performer. I try to separate it, but yeah, most people that never really fully separates art from the artist.
and it's especially hard in wrestling where, he's Chris Benoit, but he's playing the character Chris Benoit.
Right.
It's maybe even a little easier with like a Hulk Hogan where there's at least a name difference between the actual person and the character where you can say he's playing the role. But Benoit, I think, for me, it's particularly hard.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope to get across that we don't want to give offense with anything that we've said, and I hope that we don't. And if we do, I hope that we can find a way to make amends.
Mm-hmm.
Starrcade 1995 was held on December 27th, 1995, at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee, in front of 8,200 fans, 6,018 fans paid. It received about 95,000 pay-per-view buys, which, you might note, is a big drop from last year's 140,000.
That is.
In fact, if we exclude Starrcade 87, the first pay-per-view edition when the WWF played hardball, then 1995 has the lowest pay-per-view buy total yet. Before the show opened, the crowd saw 2 dark matches. Those were Diamond Dallas Page versus Dave Sullivan. Dodged a bullet there.
At least we won't have 600 of those matches on pay-per-view.
Oh, gal.
That's like 2.
The other one was the American Males, Marcus Alexander Bagwell and Scotty Riggs, versus the Blue Bloods, Lord Stephen Regal and Earl Robert Eaton. After the show, just for completion's sake, there's another dark match, that being Kensuke Sasaki versus the One Man Gang for Sasaki's WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. Now, on most of our shows, we focus on the storylines match by match, but in this case, the majority of this show focuses on the World Cup of Wrestling, a competition between WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, Al, why don't you give us the storyline setup for that?
This is the first year that Nitro exists as a viable option to get storylines, which is nice. The problem is that they still have like 6 shows, and the rest of them are not on the network. So, simple WCW Saturday Night is only up through early 1993, so that's no help. They have a thing called WCW Pro Wrestling, which seems a bit redundant in the name if you think about it.
Yeah, a little bit.
and like 2 other shows, I believe. I might be over-exaggerating that a bit, but... So, watching Nitro straight through, I'm thinking I'm getting all the story, but then I'm really not. One show, Bischoff promises to give you news about Starrcade on the next episode, and then they just announce what the show is. I'm like, oh, so here's A and there's C, but where is B? How do you get from, what's the show going to be, to, it's this? It basically revolves around a weird sort of story that Bobby Heenan is demoted to Saturday Night for a while. And he started making a deal with Sonny Ono, who's a manager slash businessman slash 6 other things. Because in wrestling, you never have one job. And Heenan convinces them that he has something to sell them, which is the show itself. WCW Saturday Night. Which, even in this point, I'm not sure how much that's really worth. But you get 1995 was like the worst year domestically, like ticket sales wise for wrestling in quite a while. So you're like buying the least valuable product of a company at like the least valuable time for a said company. But I guess they wined him and dined him and gave him all these gifts that he alludes to on Nitro. But almost none of this happens on the actual show that should be telling you what's going to happen.
Don't undersell WCW Saturday Night, though. It is the mothership.
Oh, okay.
As Dusty Rhodes calls it all the time for, I think, the next year after this. I love Dusty Rhodes.
To be fair, he's on that show, which is probably why it's
Exactly, yeah.
It's the most important show. But so it basically comes down to he tried to sell his show to Sonny Ono, which he claimed to own and didn't. So I guess to make recompense, they decided to have 80% of their biggest show of the year as them fighting New Japan for a suddenly existing World Cup of Wrestling. So we get a bunch of matches, because we don't really need story, I guess, for our mid-card. So now we have all these people on the show. A lot of them are like basically a one-off appearance as far as pay-per-view goes, for little to no reason. Excluding the fact that, as I said, wrestling is down in 1975, it's kind of easy to see why it's maybe not the biggest buy rate, because they're not selling you on, here's these big matches, the stories you gotta see. It's, oh yeah, we're doing this instead.
Yeah.
As bad as the Butcher storyline was with Hogan, at least it was a long-running story that culminated in terrible fashion, mind you, at the show, whereas this is going on instead. Have fun, watch this.
Wouldn't it have been better, we might have mentioned this, if they actually had some of the matches in Japan?
Yeah. They could have done the Starrcade, 85, 86, I think it was, where they did the two arenas.
Yeah.
That would have actually been kind of interesting to do a two arenas thing, but internationally.
You could record one early, so if you had to have someone in the main event, like elimination or something, they could be at the other place on time.
Explain that Sting jumped on a bullet train to get back from Tokyo to Nashville.
Yeah.
Just one straight trip, like an hour.
Trans-Pacific maglev.
Yeah.
Exactly. He just rides a Scorpion Hawk there. Fastest way to travel.
Well, they do have electrical tail segments, so I could see that.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm learning more about the Scorpion Hawk mythology this episode, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the life cycle is very unique. They start out as a polyp and grow inside electric eels, and then they become acclimated to electrical fields, and then, something eats that, and there you go.
I'm trying to picture that in Sir David Attenborough's voice.
Yeah.
Just really get the nature feel of that.
As countries across the world compete for global dominance, World Championship Wrestling has accepted the challenge from New Japan Pro Wrestling in a best-of-7 battle for the World Cup of Professional Wrestling. Canadian crippler Chris Benoit meets high-flying Jushin Thunder Liger. Guerrero against Otani. World TV champ Johnny B. Bad against Masa Saito, the Torture Master. We'll see Kanemoto against Wright. The total package Lex Luger faces Masa Chodo. World champ Savage against Tenzan. And Sting faces U.S. champ Sasaki. In an epic contest of global proportions at Starrcade 1995.
That music is amazing. It's like
Isn't it?
It's like a Thundercats Mega Man crossover.
Yes. I was thinking Street Fighter, but I can see both of those too. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's Thunder Liger that made me think of the cats.
There you go.
Well, he was an anime character.
Yes, he was. An opening video package oddly starts out suggesting that countries around the world are fighting for dominance, showing several national flags, before admitting that Starrcade is really just about WCW versus New Japan Pro Wrestling, neither of which is a country, by the way. During the opening video package, they misspelled Tenzan, using an S in place of the Z. 30 seconds into the show. Good start, guys.
It's a quote. You got to check that box.
I guess so.
They're close on the keyboard.
Yeah, I guess so. Tony Schiavone welcomes us to the show, once his microphone starts working, alongside Bobby the Brain Heenan and Dusty Rhodes.
Baby. It's required when you say his name.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
Rhodes is, interestingly, wearing what looks kind of like a tux jacket, but over a black shirt with blue jeans and a black cowboy hat. Somehow it kind of actually still works as an outfit.
Yeah, it's like when you watch local news and they're convinced they're never going to be standing up.
Mm-hmm.
So they just wear whatever scenes they feel like over their really fancy outfit. And then they have to stand up and they realize, oh, you can see that.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dusty says we're going to see clubberin' and hiney kickin'. He builds up the participation of good friends Sting and Lex Luger as competitors in a triangle match, and Tony says that it'll be one of them or the also participating Ric Flair facing Randy Savage for the world title at the end of the night. Heenan says there couldn't be a better place than Nashville for Dusty, and I thought he was kind of going to turn that into a jab at Dusty, but he actually just compliments Dusty on his boots and hat, and Dusty smiles at him. So, guess he can sometimes be nice. Heenan says Savage has a bad arm and bad back, and he's predicting Ric Flair will be the new World Heavyweight Champion.
Could be a new world champion, and someone will walk home with the World Cup of Wrestling. Let's go to the ring as we kick off Starrcade, the 1995 edition.
So our first match is Chris Benoit versus Jushin Thunder Liger, accompanied by Sonny Ono. The referee for this match is Randy Eller.
Benoit at the time, in the early 90s, originally wrestled in Japan as Wild Pegasus. It's got to be
great name.
It's got to be up there in the ring names people had.
That's pretty awesome.
So in 1991, he has a match against Jushin Thunder Liger. He has a Luchas de Apuestas match where it's mask versus mask. And not really spoiler, Jushin Liger did not lose his mask because he's wearing it on the show and has been wearing it for 20 odd years after that. So he actually unmasks Benoit in Japan. So it goes from being a masked wrestler to being the one we know him as.
Okay. I was not actually aware that Benoit was a masked wrestler as Wild Pegasus.
I actually was not either.
Oh.
The other thing of note is that in 1994 and 1995, they both competed in the Super J Cup, which is basically a big tournament they have between the junior heavyweights in Japan. However, due to the tournament format, it wasn't round robin, so they never actually meet in any of the shows.
Oh, okay.
2 years in a row in this big tournament, they never actually fight each other.
Interesting.
Yeah, they get really close a couple times.
Okay.
But they never actually do it. Oh, and Benoit won the 1994 one.
Oh, okay. This match starts the World Cup of Wrestling. This is a best-of-7 series. The first team, WCW or New Japan, to win 4 matches wins the trophy. We get these really strange match cards at the beginning of each match. Rather than just displaying on the screen, WCW has gotten all fancy, and they have the picture of the two wrestlers just kind of lazily drift down the screen like a falling sheet of paper. It looks strange. It continues all night and really never looks that good.
Someone was clearly inspired by like screensavers.
Yes.
They're like, ooh, I have an idea. Remember those clocks and floating windows things?
Yeah.
Let's use that.
That's like one of those cases where someone was like, ooh, I learned how to do a special effect and never questioned if they actually should.
Mm-hmm.
See also Max Magician.
Yes. Except for that one scene where the knights just disappear without any special effects. And they really should have done a special effect there.
I like the one where the little kid is turned into a mouse and he gets thrown and he says "we" before he dies. Thought he's like flying through the air.
I forgot that part. Yeah.
If I can help, my last word will be "we." So
Yeah, no.
I'm hoping for yippee.
Maybe he was proclaiming his love for Nintendo.
Ah.
Sadly, Benoit does not come out with the awesome Four Horsemen theme, despite being a member of the faction at this time. I was really bummed about that. That's one of my favorite wrestling themes.
yeah, it's weird that in both cases we should get it, we don't.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is it a coincidence that someone who is Pegasus becomes a horseman?
There you go. There you go.
Like his wings were clipped.
Yeah, the mask was his wings, and now he's a horse.
Yeah. There
All
you go.
tied together.
Yep.
Synergy.
Liger has an amazing cape this year. Red, gold, and silver. It looks awesome. Dusty calls Sonny Ono Sonny Bono. Heenan corrects him. Heenan predicts that New Japan will walk away with the World Cup, and Tony says that Heenan has sold out. Heenan denies it. He lists off a bunch of expensive goods, Alexis, TVs, watches, pearls, diamonds, and the like, but says they didn't give him all of it. He earned some. Not the strongest defense.
We're starting the tournament for the World Cup, and we have not seen it yet.
Yes, that is true.
Just keep track of how long it is till we actually get to see the cup that we're fighting for.
Yeah. We get a quiet USA chant as we start for Chris Benoit, who's from Canada.
Yeah. At least later, they change it from him being from Canada to residing in like Georgia, I believe.
Yeah.
So that you can excuse it then if you just don't know who he is, but yeah.
But not on this show.
Oh, no. No pun intended.
Liger uses speed and agility to keep ahead of Benoit and hits rapid arm drags and a dropkick to send Benoit rolling out of the ring, then follows with a flipping senton. The announcers, in a theme for the night, vary between talking about the World Cup as the USA versus Japan or WCW versus New Japan. Back in, Benoit overpowers Liger, but Liger comes back with a Hurricane Rana and a flipping axe kick that actually earn him applause from the crowd. Benoit gets a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker to win the crowd's love back, but Liger again counters everything else he tries and Benoit rolls out. Liger starts to dive, but Benoit dodges, so Liger bounces off the ropes and back into the ring. Dusty says he did a little tipsy toe, and he was teetering on totter, and Heenan is incredulous. Liger holds the ropes for Benoit, but Benoit walks around to get in elsewhere. Benoit takes over with a great snap suplex and a huge backdrop and the lion tamer hold. I'm not sure if it's actually called that yet or if that's a Jericho thing.
Shouldn't it be the Liger tamer? In this
Yeah,
case?
that would make sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Dusty says that Benoit has Liger's back strapped and his liver quivering. And Heenan asked Tony what that meant. "I'm not here as a translator, brain," Tony yells. Benoit cuts off Liger's comebacks with hard strikes. Great German suplex, but Liger gets a cool elevated bow and arrow and turns that into a dragon sleeper hold that looked like it really hurt.
Yeah, it's a good yoga pose as
Like,
well.
really, wrenches back on him, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very visual all of a sudden trying to portray that hold, sorry.
It's a nice arc to his back there.
Yeah.
I'm sure it felt great.
They trade hard-hitting counters, and Liger tries going up top, but Benoit springs up and snap superplexes Liger down. Really fast superplex there. It gets 2. Liger dodges Benoit's swan dive headbutt and gets an impressive powerbomb, counting along with the ref, which makes it a little weird when he protests getting a 2 count a moment later. You know exactly what count he was on, Liger.
To be fair, Japan uses the metric system, so that does create a discrepancy.
No.
Worth a try.
Benoit gets back in control with rolling German suplexes and a powerbomb, and hits his swan dive headbutt. But suddenly, Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Hart, in an amazing Kevin Sullivan-themed jacket, come to ringside. Sullivan yells at Benoit, and Benoit gets distracted, so Liger hits a somewhat sloppy Frankensteiner for the 3 count and the win, putting New Japan up 1-0. Boy, Jimmy Hart's lifetime dedication to Hulk Hogan sure lasted long, huh?
Yeah.
Like a month.
Yeah. A question about his jacket in this case. So, Sullivan did not have a match in a dark match for this show.
No.
So Sullivan comes out wearing his gear and his cloak, which I assume he just wears all the time.
I mean, he is Kevin Sullivan.
Yeah.
It's rumored he's a druid, you know.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
That explains so much. But Jimmy Hart was not managing him for a match, and he wears this theme jacket for his wrestlers he's managing when he's out with them. But so he was just backstage, I guess because he's hanging out with Sullivan, he has to wear Sullivan's jacket in case they go anywhere together?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean...
Like, they're going to get coffee, he's got to make sure they know he manages them by wearing his jacket.
Well, I'm sitting next to you wearing a Alec Bridgen jacket right now.
Well, yeah, but I insist on that.
Yeah, see, so Kevin Sullivan probably insists. He is a crazy man, so, I mean, I would wear a jacket with his face on it, too.
It's in the contract.
Yeah.
Uniform.
There you go. It's a work uniform. That's what it is.
Okay. I'm just saying, I think this unplanned arrival might be less unplanned than they say.
Thoughts on this one?
Okay, I'll get to the good stuff first, because you kind of know what my obvious butt to the scenario is going to be, but we'll get to there eventually. So, I really like this match as far as the action up to the end. If you don't know Japanese wrestling, they're really all about strong style, strong strikes, strong holds. Like you see it with the sort of torque he puts on that bow and arrow in the back bend. Because they super train your neck in Japan. You like sit for like an hour straight with like a full bridge on your neck. Ow. I mean, I might be exaggerating the exact time, but basically they really focus on that. That's like the core of your routine is be able to bridge and balance on your neck like that. Actually, when you watch a Japanese match, you're like, how are they getting up for that move? It's because they have like the most invulnerable necks in the world, basically. That sort of informs how matches like this are, where they are hitting each other really hard. They're definitely slamming each other around. Aside from certain things where they cooperate, like the ending spot, it's kind of the thing like with Anderson. You could see someone watch it and think, oh, this seems real. Because they were really thrown to the round. They cover the little gaps that you have to do cooperate pretty well. So it definitely creates the illusion really well. So the obvious but, of course, is the finish. Because for some reason we have to have interference in this match. And we have to have it done not in the best executed way. Because Benoit clearly could go for a pin. And so worst case scenario, Sullivan runs and attacks him and he went by DQ.
Right.
Because he just hit the headbutt. There's no reason to do anything but that. And it really would be a better insult to the guy if he's running to get you to pin the guy right in front of him and go, yeah, look what I'm doing.
And as we know, Kevin Sullivan, if you're pinning a guy, will very nicely just kind of teeter on the top rope until you're done pinning and then jump into the ring.
Yes, exactly. He really should have taken that into account. The way they did the Hurricanrana was a little weird because I know he can do those moves better. And I'm also going to think they should have had him take a power bomb and get pinned. Because you can move into that really easily. You could jump at Liger and you grab and counter him, but they went the way it did. There's certain things use it helping the realism because it's not like we see of nowadays when people take head scissors or Hurricanranas. You can tell they're just doing a front flip. There's no connection between the legs.
Yeah.
It's just it looks neat, but it's all cooperative. So I want to use it for that, but it really is just kind of an awkwardly timed and positioned version of a move I know they could do better.
I think for me, it's just that's literally the only move in the match that looks like that.
No,
where
yeah.
everything else is so smooth that makes that stand out as looking awkward. Where if other moves in the match had felt like they were fighting for the move, I would have been more willing to say that looks fine. Because I can see where you're saying where it kind of makes him look like he fought for it, but it's just for the entire rest of the match, it hasn't been like that. So that's clearly
I agree,
not the theme with that one.
No, I fully concede that point, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the ones where if you'd done a backslide, for instance, when people fight for that actually does look like part of the move. But yeah, it's a shame that's sort of mars the ending of an otherwise really good match for me.
Okay.
It's a good first match in that it is not slow. It is not boring. It looks pretty fluid. In fact, at some points, I think Liger jumps down when he's supposed to fall. I don't know if you can't actually go faster, but it looks like he's throwing himself into even those falls. They're doing it at 1.5G or something. The jump, what's it called? The headbutt? The sky butt?
The swan dive headbutt.
Okay, whatever. It's a dumb move.
No, yeah.
It's I'm going to jump and just plank in air and hopefully hit my face on something.
Yeah.
I laughed every single time he did it. It's one of those things that it only seems to hurt him when he misses, which makes absolutely no sense to me still.
Yeah. Either way, you're contacting something with your head.
And honestly, my biggest problem with the match is about 15 or 20 seconds before it's over, I know who's going to win. With the interference. So
yeah.
When he came over and started pointing his finger, I was like, oh, okay, well, script.
Yeah, it's very rare for that to get turned around after one of those. So kind of does give it away.
Unless you're the main character, then you can see that they were setting something up and then you still triumph. That's the only thing that seems to be a reversal for that.
Yeah. I agree with you guys. This was a very nice opener. Had a quick pace, good, crisp, hard-hitting moves by both men. I really liked that, actually, despite the crowd's reactions, Benoit still kind of worked heel and Liger kind of worked face. It felt like they were keeping to their characters still.
Yeah, I do that.
And just accepting that the crowd was going to react differently for this show. So, it's Benoit that gets shaken up and rolls out repeatedly, and Liger's the one that keeps pressing the attack. Benoit had some really, really great power moves, and Liger had some really excellent acrobatics, and both pulled out some very cool submission holds in the middle. The ending, like you said, works a bit against it. It's clearly to protect Benoit's reputation as a very new member of the Four Horsemen at this point, but I really would have preferred a clean finish. But still, a very hot opener that showed off both men's abilities very well.
It's 95% of a really good match, and unfortunately the other 5% is at the end.
Yeah, despite the ending on it, I'm struggling to think of an opening match that we've seen that was better.
Oh, yeah, no.
That's, if not the best opening match that we've seen, it's right up there.
It's got to be for sure, yeah.
Change the ending, get rid of one flying headbutt, and it's perfect.
Yeah, I can see that.
As you mentioned, Benoit's feud. So at this point, Sullivan's out there because there's a feud between the Dungeon and the Horsemen.
Right.
Stuff happened with Brian Pillman in a few months that changed the direction of a bunch of stuff following the Horsemen, which then turned that feud into something else, the personal feud they have going on there.
Right. We go back to Gene, who is with Eddie Guerrero.
Thank you very much, Tony Schiavone. There's a big buzz back in the locker room. What you've just seen here, Eddie Guerrero, does not set well with you.
No, it doesn't set well at all. Kevin had no reason to be there. That was
He had no business.
No, he didn't. That was Chris Benoit's match. He should have stayed out of it.
All right, let's talk about what's going to be taking place here. The World Cup of Wrestling, the best 4 out of 7 right now. WCW is down 0-1 to New Japan. In a moment or two, you're going to be going up against Otani. Size up your match, if you would, Eddie.
Well, first of all, me and Gene, what I want to do is I just want to tell you what an honor it is to be here representing WCW in the World Cup of Professional Wrestling. I mean, to be selected, one of the 7 out of all the wrestlers out there, I mean, that's a great honor. I'm just happy to be here.
And perhaps the most prestigious international event ever of this magnitude.
Yes, sir, it is, and I'm just proud to be here. And one thing I'd like to say, talking about Otani, he is a tremendous athlete. And what I had to do to prepare to be here is I had to be at the top of my game. And that's what I did. I went out, I put the hours in the gym, I put the hours in the ring just to be able to give my best today, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm representing you, the WCW fan, and I'm not going to let you down. I'm going to go out there, give it my best like I always do, and hopefully come out a winner.
By the way, I saw Eddie Guerrero back here doing some push-ups, doing some squats, getting ready for his big match with Otani. It is part of the World Cup. It is part of Starrcade 95 from Nashville, Tennessee. Right now, let's get back up to the ring.
So before we talk about the interview, we should mention, just as Eddie starts talking about the honor of representing WCW in this interview, somebody opens the door in the background and starts to enter before clearly spotting the camera and just backing right out really quickly. I was sad. I watched it a few times to see if I could identify who it was, but it was just too caught in shadows still to identify it. Just do you guys not mark the doors to prevent that? I don't know. It seems like that was entirely avoidable.
Based on the last match, I assume that was probably Kevin Sullivan. He just goes anywhere he feels like. And
I don't know. It looks too tall to be Kevin Sullivan, though. Seems like a taller guy.
So it looks like Kevin Sullivan, but taller? That does narrow it down a bit.
Oh, gal, no.
No, if it was Dave Sullivan, he would have tripped going through the door.
No, that'd be the Shockmaster.
No, he would trip going through the wall.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Guerrero feels a little flustered at first, but ends up pretty much fine. Perfectly acceptable promo, but pretty basic, babyface, I'm gonna try my best kind of promo. It's always something I appreciate, though, when a wrestler takes time to promote his opponent, too. And it's nice that Guerrero highlighted the importance of the event and his match by building up just how much he's worked to be ready for it. So, this was fine to me, but nothing particularly special. Guerrero will become a pretty great promo guy, but right now he's just kind of generic babyface. He does have a really nice, sparkly white and red jacket, though.
And to be fair to him as well, a year ago from that point, he's wrestling almost entirely in Mexico, where the focus on character and promos is completely different there. It's much more about, you're this guy wearing a mask, wearing this outfit, wrestling your match. If you cut promos, that's good. Your goal is not to be a character who performs. Your goal is to be a performer. And if you have a character, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So given he's going through a transition to that, I give him a little bit of pass.
Yeah, and it's not like they're giving him a ton of story to work with tonight or anything either.
Right.
No, that was a good promo. The thing that stood out to me, though, is actually towards the end, he's realizing that it's a big event. He's like, Starrcade! Screams it into the thing.
I was thinking that too, yeah. It's like a sudden ramp up.
It's like he's reading off a teleprompter. That's the only thing that's bold and underlined.
The other possibility is that Eric Bischoff, who we don't see, is behind him with a cattle prod and zaps him when he's at Starrcade. Starrcade!
Starrcade!
Ah, sorry.
Yeah.
If anyone would.
Or maybe just that at the end, it's just the only part he rehearsed.
There you
It's
go.
he's confident.
He does seem to get a lot smoother as the promo goes on, where at first he's kind of stumbling a little bit. I think Gene kind of does help by jumping in, saying the no business line, and that kind of gets him focused on it and helps him get past that point.
It's definitely a more subtle version of the actor giving the other person his line.
Yes.
Than you get sometimes where, like, don't you mean you're really concerned? Oh, yes, I'm really concerned.
What he said.
Yeah. So our second match is Alex Wright versus Koji Kanemoto with Sonny Ono. The referee for this match is Nick Patrick.
I do have to note that it's not mentioned at all in the show, but fairly recently, before the show, Kanemoto won the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship, which had previously been held by Jushin Liger. And this is supposed to be, at least according to Japan, an official title defense for this belt, which is the first time it ever happened, by the way. So, of course, WCW clearly does not comment on history being made.
The first time the belt was defended?
No, in the United States.
Oh, okay. So that's the first time that the belt was defended in the United States.
Yeah, like, at all.
Oh, okay.
The next time there's a big title match involving it is about 4 years from now, which involves Liger, which is good, but involves him being hit over the head by a bottle of tequila, which is not good. So no matter how you feel with this match, it does not involve that.
Okay.
I won't give much context. You can look that up yourself. It's really bad.
Kanemoto comes down to the ring in a pretty cool-looking black and white G with a silver belt. It felt like just the right mix of serious and flashy to me. He also, it must be noted, has very wonderful, fluffy hair, which somehow remains wonderful, fluffy hair all the way through the match and afterwards. It never gets the pressed down, sweaty look or anything. I have no idea what he uses, but it's a good product.
Yeah, give it. Yeah,
I don't know, man. I just noticed that.
No, I absolutely had that note as well. Whatever happens with Brock Lesnar, or how much he sweats like gallons just walking to the ring, the opposite for Kanemoto.
Yeah. As he comes to the ring, also, we get a terrifying shot of a guy dressed like Hulk Hogan in the crowd who is screaming at the camera. It's very frightening.
Yeah, he didn't realize that Hogan was storyline suspended 2 weeks before the show because I guess he didn't feel like being on it.
Yeah.
But I'll get more into that later.
Alex Wright still has his techno dancing music, but while he still does the backflip off the top, he doesn't dance today. Sorry, John.
I was actually quite disappointed.
I bet, because that was a highlight for you last show.
I mean, it's entertainment.
And admittedly, last show didn't have that many highlights, so...
They did make a shirt explaining how Alex Wright's dance does work.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you can Google it. It's pretty amazing. If I can ever find it, I will get it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very informative.
I did like his black leather jacket this time. It had the pretty cool logo on the back, I thought.
Oh, yeah.
They trade hammer locks and arm locks, and the crowd chants USA for Alex Wright from Germany. Jeez. 2 for 2 so far.
The right stuff.
Dusty randomly talks about hanging out at a club, tripping the light fandango. And Tony compliments his dancing. Kanemoto gets a cool spinning leg takedown and works the leg, but eats enziguri. Wright works Kanemoto's arm, but Kanemoto reverses and Wright cartwheels free and hits a fast series of throws, finishing in a head scissors and a dropkick. Tony and Heenan both nicely note that Wright starts out both moves the same way, so his opponent doesn't know which is coming, which is a nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
Kanemoto slumps on the ropes, but doesn't seem to like his location, so he just kind of gets up and moves elsewhere and slumps again. Wright crossbodies both of them out. I guess you don't get DQ'd for going over the top rope on that because you also went out?
Yeah.
So it balances out, I guess?
You're being DQ'd while getting your DQ credit by being thrown over the top
Okay.
rope. So it's null.
Yeah, so it's
Wash.
a DQ null. Okay.
Yeah. There's a rule book for this. We've discussed it.
Yeah, we need to write that rule book at some point. Wright keeps Kanemoto out with a baseball slide and dives out onto him. Back in, Wright goes for a sleeper, but Kanemoto backs him into the corner and takes over with strikes, leading to a really nice spinning wheel kick. Kanemoto hits strikes and a drop kick in the corner and puts Wright on the apron, and then they just kind of hold on for a bit. Dusty wonders if Kanemoto is trying to uncle Wright, and Tony asks if Heenan knows what that means. Heenan says it's the opposite of anting. Oh, man. Kanemoto finally dropkicks Wright off the apron and dives on Wright. Wright gets the better of an outside brawl, but back inside, Kanemoto gets a tiger suplex for 1 and a moonsault, but lets Wright up. It costs him as Wright counters a whip into a German suplex for 2 and gets a jumping leg lariat and back elbow. Yeah! Yells Wright, attempting to have a personality. Oh, come on, guys.
I mean, yeah, you gotta... I was mimicking the reaction he gets for doing that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, you didn't have to say, you could have said suplex. That's more in line with the theme of what this show is.
Yeah.
So never mind.
Kanemoto counters a top rope dropkick with his own dropkick, though both mostly miss. Patrick counts to 7, and they're up, trading quick moves, including a Muda-esque spin kick by Kanemoto, and a dropkick by Wright that sends Kanemoto, as Dusty calls it, butt over tea kettle.
Yes.
I don't want to know what the tea kettle in his house look like at this point.
Yeah. A Wright superplex gets 2, but Kanemoto counters a whip and catches Wright trying to slip up and over, dropping Wright jaw first on the turnbuckle. Kanemoto hits a double leg takedown and flips over to hold Wright down for the 3 count and the win, putting New Japan up 2-0. Amusingly, during the replays, Heenan miscalls Kanemoto's moonsault as a somersault, and Dusty tries to correct him, but calls it a flip. Neither of you guys know what that's actually called, do you?
No.
Thoughts on this one?
It's a match made up of, I thought, really good strikes. They had the timing and sort of the snap of those really well. It's not, obviously, a little different from the more visceral ones you get in the Liger Benoit match. So it's a little, I won't say prettier, but definitely quicker, like flashier moves in general, I would say. But at the same time, it's nice that they don't sort of ignore the fundamentals of it. It's not like a bunch of kicks, but then they have to do holds. Because their holds in wrestling are really good as well.
Yeah.
They flow really nicely. I guess my real problem with the match is before the ending sequence, they kind of lose the flow of it a bit. By the end, it's, Kanemoto slams him, tries to do a move, and misses. Alex Wright responds to grab him, slam him, and try to top rope move, which also misses. And then the finish it's well done. It's just kind of a weird anticlimax of a thing. There are all these strikes and counters. It's just set him down and just float over and pin him.
I felt exactly the same way on the finish. It's like you did big move, big move, big move, big move. Oh, it can't quite take him down. And then, wait, that's it?
Yeah.
It's like it's a perfectly fine execution on it, but just with all the build, I was expecting something really big at the end, and it just like, oh, that's underwhelming.
Right.
I thought it was a good match. Again, 2 energetic matches that had a lot of technical skill, a lot of high flying. Alex actually kind of reminds me of like a Das Wanderboat, like a steamboat-esque, Das Wanderboat, and I'm gonna try to sell it. Koji really does a good job of selling. Even some of the stuff that Wright does, Koji just will fling himself back. There's one kick. It looks like Alex is going quick, but he just touches him, and Koji just flies from the ring and into the barrier. That kind of made me take notice of him. Good physical prowess and athleticism from both. I'm kind of glad that Koji won, just not necessarily the way he did.
Yeah, what's your feeling on the ending? Did that kind of catch you the same way as us, or was it?
I wasn't expecting that to be the end. And at least it was different than anything else in the match. It wasn't like, they had tried one move 3 times and either, succeeded all 3 or failed and finally landed it. I honestly thought the end of the match was going to be when they both met each other midair. I thought they were going to end the match there and, have one or the other recover quickly and roll them up. But it just went on for 3 minutes after that.
Yeah. From my perspective, this was a good match, albeit one that got a little bit sloppy at times. They seemed to have a few miscommunications here and there, a few spots where you could tell that they were working something out or clearly moving into position for one another. They just didn't hide the cooperation as well as in most matches. But Both men had some very nice moves, and they largely kept up a very fast pace. They built nicely on their spots, too. In particular, Wright's float over in the corner works the first time and gets countered the second. And the series of top rope dropkick attempts before Wright finally manages to land one solidly is kind of nice, too. If only he was as skilled at judging the possibility of top rope dropkicks as the Z-Man, huh?
He knows when it's possible and when it's not possible. Yeah.
Yeah. He would have saved himself some pain there. Kanemoto has some very good character work and some great expressions, which helps make up for Wright largely not having much character or expression himself. I liked it, but it could have used more polish, I guess is how I'd put it.
There was that nice spot, sort of jokingly I say this, where he has Kanemoto tangled in the ropes, and he's, I guess, supposed to do like a shoulder block to the stomach. But he kind of just leans up with his shoulder against his stomach.
So gentle, yeah.
Yeah. It's like he's leaning in to sort of rub his shoulder on his belly, and he's like, oh, right, I mean, shoulder block, second time, and actual impact.
He's gauging the distance.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm just picturing what Al was talking about. It's like when those cats, they put their head up against you. It's like a term of endearment. And plotting.
Yes.
Mostly the latter, yes.
Yeah.
Depending what company you work at, the big show of the year is different times. Theoretically, it's Starrcade, although this show makes you think otherwise. For WCW, obviously WWE or F at the time, it's WrestleMania, which is in March, April, this time period. The biggest one, for the most part, for New Japan is Wrestle Kingdom. At that match, Koji Kanemoto had to defend his IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship against Jushin Thunder Liger, which he lost. And yes, that was in January. So, streak continues even across the pond in Japan. Unfortunately, I was kind of looking more Alex Wright stuff up. He seems like, unfortunately, for the next several months, he's still on shows, but he's on pre-shows or he's wrestling dark matches.
Mm-hmm.
At least for now, his sort of high point mid-card phase is kind of past, or I don't know if they're over him or what, but...
I know he shows up on Nitros a lot over the course of 96.
But his pay-per-view appearances dropped noticeably after the show, up until they started to rebrand him a couple times. It's a little bit of a shame, because he's a good worker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We go to the announcers, and Tony breaks down the current status and notes that to win, WCW now has to win 4 of the remaining 5 matches. Dusty says that WCW has to regroup, and Heenan holds up a present that he got from Sonny Ono that's a little display of the Japanese and U.S. flags. Again, the first 2 wrestlers for WCW were a Canadian and a German. This is not the USA versus Japan. This is WCW versus New Japan. Heenan says WCW knows that they're in trouble, and Tony throws to Gene Okerlund, who is with Sonny Ono.
Tell you the truth, Tony, I've got Sonny Ono standing by. I'm going to be talking with him in a moment. He is delighted. He is coming out of his shoes right now because New Japan Pro Wrestling is up 2-0 here for the World Cup of Wrestling. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, this past week, an extraordinary amount of money, Gitas, the long green, was offered to a superstar. Mark Madden will have complete details on that story tonight during his exclusive hotline report. Give the madman a call from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at 1-900-909-9900 for all of the inside stories and for what's happening behind the scenes here at Starrcade. Call the hotline right now. Take a look at that big grin on your face. Sonny Ono, come on in. It's 2-0 right now. You obviously are delighted.
Pretty soon it'll be 5-0.
Well, it won't get to 5-0. If it gets to 4-0, we're going to close down shop.
Close down shop, and maybe we buy WCW, then maybe we buy Iowa.
Wait a minute. Buy WCW. WCW is not for sale. Iowa, that might be another story. I don't know a whole lot about this state.
This is America. Everything's for sale.
Well, you Japanese people would know that, yes.
You noticed. As you didn't know. Nobody knew. But we have friends in Dungeons of Doom. I just saw in the first match.
Was somebody paid off?
No.
Wait a minute. Now, was somebody paid off? You just say, oh, no?
No.
Sonny?
Oh, no, my name.
Oni. Hey, don't work with me, please. Give me a break. Right now, let's get back to Eric. Oh, I beg your pardon, to Tony. You are confusing me a little.
Oh, so sorry.
Oh, my goodness. Gene Okerlund is in a quandary right now. And yes, everyone has a price, don't they, Brain?
I feel like that's someone else's catchphrase, Tony.
Yeah, but it is a good line.
Mm-hmm.
Just does a very nice, smooth, everyone has a price, and then looks really quickly over it. Don't they, Brain?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as for the promo itself, Ono's character plays up the broken English here, which, I don't know. I recognize this is a little bit hypocritical from things I've said previously, but I felt more okay with it when it was the fake Russians doing it, rather than a real Japanese guy.
Right.
There's less of a racial angle to it then, I guess. There's a few kind of funny moments in this promo, including Gene accidentally calling Tony Eric, but it's largely just kind of uncomfortable to watch to me.
And what does Iowa come into play?
I was looking for things about that, actually.
All right.
Glad you asked. So I tried to find out if buying Iowa was a reference to something, and I'm not sure. But the closest I could find was there was a late 1995 story from the New York Times about the Iowa straw poll, where participation did not require Iowa residency, but a $25 ticket. So campaigns were bringing in people from out of town and paying for them to attend the straw poll to improve their ranking. So I guess someone might have referred to that as buying Iowa at some point, but I didn't find something with that specific language.
Wait, are you implying that money is affecting politics in some way?
No, not.
Okay, good. I was like, there's no way that's possible.
But it happened. It was like, I think, I don't know, late 1995 that story was, so it would have been fresh in people's minds.
I liked how he kept on giving all the names for money.
That was weird.
I was really hoping to be like big cheddar, bread, the whole sandwich.
Yeah, just keep it going. Go for as long as you can, yeah.
There's definitely a bit of historical irony that he takes super great offense to the idea that someone would buy WCW. Like, that could possibly happen.
Yes, true.
Meanwhile, Japan, a sovereign country, buying one of our states is like, well, maybe.
Yeah.
That's way more plausible than someone buying WCW.
Well, WCW is more established than this Iowa place.
Yeah. Dusty says WCW is down 2 points and needs to catch up. And he says it's time to bring out their cannons. Tony throws to the third match with, quote, one of the big cannons, Lex Luger. So our third match is Lex Luger with the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, versus Masahiro Chono with Sonny Ono. Referee for this match is Randy Eller.
On one of the New Japan Super shows, which in Japan was called Starrcade, as a fun side note, we technically have more Starrcade after the final official Starrcade, should we eventually cover them, which I think we will. And one of those is Lex Luger defending the title against Chono.
Okay.
But other than that, there's not really a lot of interaction between them.
Chono has an awesome-looking sleeveless coat, very 1990s comic book vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of character for his look that he didn't have last time we saw him.
Yeah. Definitely got more of a, like I said, more of a character to him this time. He is also still, we're told, the master of the STF, however.
I think there's some young man named Eric Watts who really wants to battle him over that.
Yeah. Luger sadly mitched at... Wow, really, Bobby? Okay.
Keep it.
I've been watching Baywatching recently, sorry. Mitch is on my mind. Luger sadly missed out on the lyrical theme songs, but the generic rock tune that he's got is kind of annoyingly catchy all the same. Jimmy Hart is out with him, and he's wearing an amazing Lex Luger jacket now. Luger gives us a peck jiggle as he comes to the ring. Tony says that both men once held the, quote, gigantic gold belt Randy Savage now holds. I guess the big gold belt got an upgrade in Tony's mind. But to the best of my knowledge, that's wrong. When Luger won the WCW title, it was while Flair had left the company with the big gold belt. And when Flair sent it back, it became the NWA title that was separate from Luger's WCW title. And Luger didn't return to the company until recently, so he missed the whole NWA Championship and WCW International Championship thing.
Well, I don't know if missed is the right word for it.
Dodged.
That's probably better, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, a bit of a nitpick, as I'm sure what Tony actually meant was that both were former world champions, which is cool, but hey, if I wasn't going to nitpick, right, why have a review show?
Right. I will say there's a lovely picture of Chono holding the big gold belt, so I know he did, in fact.
Yeah, he had it while it was the NWA title.
Correct.
Luger dominates with strength and sells his own strikes louder than Chono. I've missed you, Luger. Chono comes back with flying forearms and a high side kick called the Yakuza kick, which Tony localizes as Mafia kick. Luger rolls out to recover. Back in, Luger starts off strong, but Chono reverses a suplex and beats Luger up as the crowd chants USA. And for the first time, they're chanting it for a wrestler from the United States.
He, in fact, got a big bus that lets you know he was from the United States. So
he was your hero.
Mm-hmm.
Hero.
Yes.
Oh. Chono uses chokes and tries an eye gouge, but Hart alerts Eller. Chono cuts off a Luger comeback with a sleeper hold into a reverse DDT and grabs the STF as Heenan predicts that it'll be 3-0. But Dusty says the hold isn't on quite right, and Luger gets the ropes for a break. See, now I bet Eric Watts would have hooked it in just right.
Mm-hmm.
Chono fails to block a punch, but Luger stops anyway. Chono and Luger trade blows, and Luger sells everybody's.
He's giving.
Yeah. Particularly loud Luger sell on a Chono atomic drop. Weirdly, Chono gets to the apron, but then just gets right back in for the Yakuza or / Mafia kick, as Dusty is utterly perplexed by the move's name. Luger counters a Chono top rope move with a back elbow, and Dusty exclaims, "He hit him with the Sicilian elbow!" Somewhat unceremoniously, Luger gets the torture rack, and Chono gives up. WCW gets a point, and the score is now 2-1, with New Japan still in the lead. Thoughts on this one?
So, in-ring wise, it's not quite as strong as the previous two, I would say. It's one of those ones where they don't do a whole lot of really interesting stuff in the ring. That said, the match is really defined by two things. One of which is they're clearly set up characters.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike, as I mentioned last time we saw Chono, he was generic wrestler guy, who was really good, don't get me wrong, but I just felt nothing for his character when I saw him, and I really struggled with that match we had with him and Muta. As blasphemous as that sounds, I just got very little out of that match, and I really thought I would.
Still feel like I should have liked that match more than I did, but same way.
A few years later, now he's back as a clearly defined character and look, and Luger has fully accepted his sort of over-the-top Lex Luger character, selling and all. If literally the exact same match played out with two different wrestlers, it wouldn't be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Literally every move and sequence, if we copied and pasted, it would not be the same without them. Luger's selling is gloriously over the top.
Yes.
The high point for me is when he's getting kicked and sells super loud, and then kicks back in response and sells the exact same way at the exact same volume.
Yeah, it makes literally the same sound when he's getting hit and hitting someone else in sequence. It's awesome.
The Luger selling thing is like he was ribbed for like a decade, and someone told him everyone sells like that, and somehow he didn't figure out after, I assume, hundreds of matches when no one else did that but him. He's like, okay, maybe this time they'll do it, and then they did, and he's like, that's weird, but I'll keep trying this until it works.
So I'm the only guy that knows how to sell in the company, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa!
As you mentioned, there was a one bit with the punch is definitely a little awkward, because he clearly doesn't actually stop the punch.
Yeah.
The other part is, as you sort of hinted at, so Chono clearly goes to the outside, like he's going to climb the rope and jump at Luger. But then, I guess, realizing the wrong position for the way the match is supposed to end, so he kicks him, runs to the other side of the ring, where now he's facing Luger's back, which is an important difference, so you can take the back elbow and be countered. So I guess he couldn't be countered by a forward punch or an elbow, I
don't know.
It had to work that he's surprised by the elbow and then put the torture rack, I guess.
It was a good elbow.
No,
it was a good elbow,
yeah.
It's just setting it up is a little bit awkward, but the actual spot itself looks awesome.
Right. It's an awkward way to get to where they get, but on the plus side, Luger actually wins with the torture rack on pay-per-view.
Yes.
On Starrcade, finally breaking the streak of him either not winning or winning some other way.
I do have a theory about Luger selling, though. I think that Luger saw an opportunity for voice acting and wanted to get himself in the royalty-free area, and he's trying to compete with like the Wilhelm scream.
Oh, there you go.
He just tries a different variation until he gets the right one.
Okay.
And the one you hear twice is like the most current version.
I think he's trying to try out for like fighting game sound effects. He records it, and then he goes to where they're making the new Street Fighter. He's like, "No, this is what it should sound like if someone's taking a sonic boom." Mm-hmm. He's like, "Whoa!" Thoughts on the match itself?
It was pretty formulaic. I don't know Chono as well as either of you, but I did enjoy watching him. There wasn't anything other than the finish that wasn't out of the ordinary or unique from Luger. Mm-hmm. I do like that he has some charisma, and I know that it's not a bear hug, but I'm kind of over the crotch shot stuff to set up, especially if it lasts forever. I think the Nature Boy ruined that for me. But it wasn't bad. Again, I still was looking back at the first two matches and comparing it to this one.
I'll say, you can tell by the crowd reaction, because once he hits the elbow and clearly he's going to do the torture rack, the crowd just like super pops.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In contrast to like a minute before where they're into it, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And it's the first Sicilian elbow I've ever seen, and it's done perfectly.
Yeah. I'm pretty much with you guys on it. There wasn't a lot to this one, but it was still pretty entertaining. Part of that is the Luger selling, of course. I've really missed that.
Oh, yeah.
But both wrestlers did get opportunities to do something cool. Chono's kicks looked really good, and Luger's power was quite impressive. Like you guys, the back elbow spot was a nice idea for a counter. And yeah, like you were saying, Al, it's great to finally see the torture rack actually win a match for Luger.
Yes.
That said, it just feels like this isn't a complete match design. It has the big moments, but nothing that really ties them together. There's not much of a story to the match, just some fun spots. It doesn't really build up to its finish in any way. It just kind of decides to end. It entertained me, but it didn't involve me, if that distinction makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. It's good to see USA making a comeback.
/ WCW.
Mm-hmm.
Lex Luger has an interesting couple of months in the immediate follow-up. He will win a tag title with Sting and hold the TV title as well. Although, to note, he's not holding them both at the same time, which would be pretty cool. And he wins the TV title at a house show against Johnny B. Bad and holds it for an entire day. And then loses it back. I think it's part of their weird thing they try a lot later, where they just randomly have big matches and title changes at house shows just to see if people were paying attention and trying to draw attendance up, especially.
Hey, anything can happen, Adam.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have a fun note for Chono, though. Chono, at this point in time, is a bad guy, obviously you can tell by his attire. He's teamed up with Masa Saito, the guy we'll see the next match. Their name is Team Wolf.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that name.
I think he's locked in MVP just from that.
Yeah. That earned him some points.
Yeah. I figured you like that.
We go backstage to Gene Okerlund, who is with Sting.
Tony, it's beginning to look a little bit like, the 27th of December, 1995 here at Starrcade. It's New Japan Pro Wrestling 2, WCW 1, and Sting, that's got to be good news for your team.
You got it. It's 2-1, and we are coming on strong. Johnny B. Bad is in the ring next, right?
That's absolutely right. I want to talk about your matches.
Well, he's going to even a score. That's all I wanted to say. Go ahead. Ask me.
Okay. Kensuke Sasaki, a couple of months ago in Japan on foreign soil, defeated you for the United States title, a title that he holds right now. Now, that title will not be up for grabs tonight. However, you've got him one-on-one. Perhaps a measure of revenge here.
That was a bad day a couple of months ago in Japan. You had to bring that up, didn't you? The U.S. title is not up for grabs tonight, but guess what? Pride is what is up for grabs. And Sonny, what's that guy's name?
Sonny, oh no.
Oh no is right. Talking about buying WCW over the Stinger's dead body, my friend.
All right, Sting.
You got another thing coming.
Triangle match, yourself, Lex Luger, victorious just moments ago, and the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. The three of you, of course, have been stalwarts here at World Championship Wrestling for the last 3 or 4 years. Maybe a little bit longer than that. You know what you're up against. Size this one up. You know what the stakes are.
Well, I've sized it up before, and I know you're probably going to ask me your favorite question.
What's the deal with Luger?
Yeah, I know. We'll get to that in a minute. We got this triangle thing going on. It's going to be interesting. All I got to say is, Luger and I are friends, okay? Macho and I are trying to work things out too. Last week you could see it got a little bit edgy, didn't it? And I want it to get that way again. Luger, my best friend, I love you, pal, but you say you gotta do what you gotta do. Well, guess what? The Stinger's gotta do what he's gotta do also. And the Nature Boy, you know the way I feel about you. I'll never, ever, ever forget what you did to me. Mach, I want you so bad I can taste you.
Okay, it is thick enough. You can cut it with a knife right now. I'm talking about the electricity in the air as we get back to the Launchman in the ring. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, with New Japan.
He's like a proto John Cena.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he needs therapy. He's got these relationship issues. He needs to work them out.
Yeah.
It's funny you meant to say that because John Cena originally was the prototype.
Oh, yeah.
So
true.
he's a
yeah.
prototype.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
all right.
Yeah, unusual Sting promo here. He's a bit more confrontational with Gene than normal, but he has his usual big personality and makes good use of it to build up the kind of complex angles that have been happening around him. They make good use of Sting's prior loss to Sasaki to build up their, at this point, still potential match. And they highlight Sting's friendship with Luger, who is just about enemies with Savage at this point.
Well, he literally fought him. He tried to win the title off him like 2 weeks before the show.
Right, but I mean, it's gone beyond just competition to actually, like, Luger's kind of playing between face and heel.
I mean, well, he tried to break Savage's arm at one point, a month ago, so yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say it's gotten pretty bad.
Yeah. So, where Sting has been still close to Hogan and Savage, so it's an interesting angle that they've got going on there. Sting also effectively builds up his rivalry with Savage, and his, of course, long-standing feud with Ric Flair. So he really did a lot to focus on the elements of the Triangle match and World title storyline tonight. They pack in quite a lot here, but I think it works well overall. And I like that Sting took a moment to build up Johnny B. Bad, too.
Mm-hmm.
He really takes a moment to make sure that they get that in, which I appreciated.
Yeah. There's a lot of long-running debate, especially as you get more character versions of Sting, as to which is the best version of Sting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Server Sting, the one we'll get next year, is it sort of the hybrid Sting? Is it definitely not Joker Sting from TNA? We all agree it's not that one. At this point, I kind of like sarcastic Sting.
He's pretty good at sarcasm.
Really growing on me.
Yeah.
We have to, as a side note, mention that they did refer to Luger, Sting, and Flair as the stalwarts of WCW over the last few years.
Yeah. Yes, but Luger not for the past few years.
Yeah,
and
Luger literally just returned in October.
And Flair actually not for a couple of the past few years, because he was gone for 91 and 92.
He retired.
And then retired for last year's show, effectively. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Sting, yeah, sure, totally. The other ones, maybe not so much.
No, not so much, yeah.
Tony throws to the next match and says that Sting's comments were interesting. Tony wonders if Sting may turn his back on his fans tonight with his do what he has to do comments. Dusty says that Sting is ready to go and not afraid of consequences, but don't question his integrity. Our next match is Johnny B. Bad with Kimberly, the Diamond Doll, versus Masa Saito with Sonny Ono. The referee for this match is Nick Patrick. Bad is accompanied by Kimberly, the Diamond Doll, so named because she was previously the valet to Diamond Dallas Page. Bad wears a sparkly black and silver cape that reads, "Have a bad day," and Kimberly is wearing black and silver too. We get a quick shot of a fan in the crowd that's holding up a Johnny B. Bad action figure.
Mm-hmm. Well, and next to a actual poster of him.
Yes.
There's a weird contrast.
Yeah.
Here's what he looks like, and here's him as a tiny doll.
It's comparison purposes, I guess.
Yeah. Scale.
Accuracy.
Kimberly and Bad each take a blaster and fire confetti to the crowd, but WCW only focuses on Kimberly and misses Bad's. Would have been a good rare...
I
don't know where I am sometimes tonight. Oh my gosh. Would have been a rare good moment for one of your sudden wide shots, WCW.
Mm-hmm.
That poor guy's still strapped to the ceiling, filming downward. They're just not using him.
75 feet in the air.
Let me down at least.
They could have had the ground crew.
Oh, the dude that fell over. Yeah,
Yeah,
we could have him do it.
Actually, I kind of wish they had a guy on the ring side where they're fighting towards, like holding upward and see if he gets confetti on the lens. That'd be a great effect to see it fall and cover part of the frame for a second.
Bobby Heenan gets in a pretty good line here that people are now calling DDP Diamond Dull-less Page. Masa Saito has a very serious sports star kind of look, which is kind of a good contrast to Bad. It's very flashy versus very serious.
If you look at Saito's jacket, it's written as M. Dot, and his name is spelled out in the back, like the thing. It has an H at the end of it.
Huh.
And I've never seen it written or spelled that way in a time.
Interesting.
I think there is a Japanese thing where you put H at the end of some name, but we don't always use it. I've seen a couple versions of that, but...
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's the names are written with an entirely different character set. So
right.
You know, it's how they transition that to our character set, so...
But I've seen a couple other instances where the name ends with an O, and I've seen it with and without an H.
Interesting. So here's the segment that I mentioned as we began.
Yeah.
Sonny Ono comes into the ring and takes a microphone and proclaims that Kimberly should be home cooking or doing dishes, and she takes umbrage, telling him off. This is a horrible stereotype, and it's poorly acted besides.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention that it makes 0 sense for Sonny Ono as a character. The suggestion here is that he has a real problem with women being in the wrestling ring, and he thinks it's only a place for men. At the previous month's show, World War III 1995, Sonny Ono managed women wrestlers Bull Nakano and Akira Hokuto in a tag team match. Ono would continue to manage Nakano and Hokuto, along with Malia Hosaka, through 1996 and I believe into 1997.
Mm-hmm.
In the 90s, by my understanding, there was a real boom in women's pro wrestling in Japan, with multiple promotions springing up to join other long-running promotions entirely dedicated to it. In fact, in 2002, when All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling had to close its doors due in part to losing performers to those new promotions, it was, at the time, the longest-running pro wrestling promotion in Japan at 37 years. Considering that WCW could barely be bothered to have a women's division for most of its run, it's a real laugh to have them supposedly defending female performers here. Oh, and by the way, speaking of WCW's women's division, Medusa literally showed up on Nitro less than a month ago to chuck the WWF women's title in a trash can and proclaim that WCW wasn't just where the big boys play, but now it was where the big girls play. This pay-per-view would have been a great chance to maybe have a match between, Medusa and Nakano or Hokuto, for instance. That easily could have been a part of the WCW versus New Japan storyline. Oh, and by the way, Kimberly calls Ono Hop Sing, referencing a character from Bonanza who was Chinese. Bad idea all around. This bit was actively insulting and should never have been part of the show.
So Akira Hokuto is at this point, and as of recording now, married to Kensuke Sasaki, who is part of this tournament and also met with Sonny Ono.
Yeah, this was not a great moment on the show. All right, on to the match. Saito is just too strong for Bad starting out, brushing off his holds and taking him down with ease, leading to the most intense headlock I think I've ever seen, as it looked like Saito was trying to twist Bad's head off. Bad fights to his feet, but Saito pulls the hair to take him down, and wins a resulting brawl. Saito continues dominating, and when Patrick warns him about choking, Ono takes the opportunity to choke Bad with his Japanese flag. Saito gets 2 counts off of a big back suplex, a clothesline, and a Russian leg sweep before Bad finally comes back with punches, a knee lift, and a top rope double axe handle into his beautiful top rope sunset flip for 2. Saito bows to Bad, but Bad kicks him. I'm not sure if it was supposed to come off this way, but it felt like Saito was showing respect for Bad's effort, and Bad totally disrespected him for it. Bad knocks Saito down again and gets a suplex, but only gets like half a count. Things seem to get a bit confused as Bad keeps looking behind him, and Kimberly shouts something. Ono finally gets on the apron, so Bad runs over and grabs him, but Saito hits him from behind. Ono takes Bad over the top rope, and Patrick DQs Saito, tying the World Cup score 2-2. The bell rings and the announcer starts to speak, but cuts off as Saito stalks towards Kimberly. Bad comes back in and grabs Saito and lands punches and a couple drop kicks to send him fleeing outside. Saito leans on the apron, and Bad vaults over the top rope and outside, and virtually entirely misses him, splatting on the safety mats. Ow.
He's like one move away from having a good closing to this sequence. It's kind of a little bit of a mess. But he decided to do his flashy finishing, was it a Bad Day, I think it's called?
I think it's called the Bad Day, yeah.
Yeah. Which is a really nice looking flip, but yeah, the guy is basically in front of where he lands, and he just hops over a guy really beautifully, but does nothing.
Saito kind of sells it anyway, and Bad chases Ono off before going back in to pose and root for the upcoming WCW wrestlers. Thoughts on this one?
I'm not a huge fan of this one. I will say I liked it better the second time I watched it. I was really underwhelmed the first time. I can see strong points for it. As you mentioned, Saito at this point he doesn't have a lot of in-ring flashiness to him. He's a big, burly guy who can grab you hard and can't be knocked down, but that's about all he has at this point. Bad, thankfully, has a lot of personality and flash to what little moves he's allowed to do. I'll give the match credit. It's kind of interesting clash of styles, because sort of a flashy striker and a no-frills guy. But it's one of those ones where if Saito was at a different point in his career, like if this was Saito 5 years ago and Bad his current state, it might have been a more dynamic back and forth contest. Where at this point, Saito just can't do a lot. He's 53 at the point of the show, which credit due. I mean, I can't do this now. It's not a great finish. It's kind of annoying that Bad gets to win, but only by DQ.
Yeah.
It could be really good, but it's okay for what little it is.
I actually do like their styles. You know, there's a certain rawness to it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking to be flashy. They're just trying to power through that move. Nothing looks super clean, but that's okay because there's not like a oversell. It looks like there's actually some power behind some of the strikes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do see that flip over the ropes over and over and over in my head.
Yeah.
But, you know, they could have, like, saved it. Like you said earlier, you wish he didn't win by DQ earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've already seen a over-the-ropes non-DQ earlier.
Yes.
I guess they're making up for that here.
Yeah.
He could have easily just threw him back in the thing and actually was like, looked at the ref and said, look, I'm going to pin him and pinned him, you know, like, and got like a legit, you know, I could see Bad doing that or doing a couple moves and then pinning him.
Yeah.
But I guess it wasn't really necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why it's a common thing where like someone goes after the girl or the.
Yeah.
I guess it is a try to build up one character and not the other. I don't know.
I mean, at least that's cut off very quickly in this one, but I wasn't a fan of that coming up either. As for the match, I rather liked actually what we got of it. Both hit some nice strikes and some suplexes, like you were talking about, John. And Saito really, really wrenched on his holds, which I appreciated. Like, none of his holds looked like he was using them to rest at all. It was like he's always working on them, which I appreciated a lot. Bad sunset flip off the top rope looked great once again. But this is so short. I looked at the match time, and it's listed as 5 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yeah.
I feel like these guys have more than 5 minutes and 52 seconds in them.
I think Bad did for sure.
Yeah. Honestly, for my part, I think Saito did too. But I would have liked to see what more they could do with, say, just double the time. Not like a super long match, but a little longer than this. As it is, I feel like this barely gets going, and the ending is clearly mistimed. I think Ono was supposed to be up on the apron earlier, so it just doesn't end up working quite that well. Give this, say, 5 more minutes and time the ending right, and I think the match would actually probably be quite good, but it just doesn't get the time to fulfill its potential, really.
I understand where you're coming from, where he does look back like 2 times really quickly for Ono, and seeing it again, especially with that in mind, it is a giveaway that he's waiting for him to be there. Mm-hmm. But I will say at least Ono had interfered before. So it's not like Ono was never, like, didn't do anything. Suddenly he's staring over there where he's at for no reason.
Yeah. True, I'll give you that. But also, there's that really odd break of the pinfall, too, where he literally gets like half a count.
Yeah.
And so what I'm thinking was probably supposed to happen is he was supposed to go for the pin. Ono was at that point supposed to jump up. Thereby, the ref would get up and go over and look at Ono. That would cause Bad to get up. So Bad's thinking that that's happened and goes ahead and gets off, but for no reason.
Oh, yeah, no, I will absolutely not say that it goes 100% smoothly. I just think if you don't think about what it's probably supposed to be, just look at it for what it is. It's him sort of acting nervous before he's about to presumably do a big move to Saito, and then on the second or third, quick glance, he sees the guy, and then it goes right to that finish. It's not a smooth way it works, but I don't know. I'm not super bothered by that. It's still a DQ finish in the match. I don't like it, but it's an okay version of it, if anything.
I can't defend the DQ on this one.
Yeah.
I will say this on the slightly on Saito. Saito is one of the few people who has a move named after him. There's literally a Saito suplex.
Yes.
So you can't take that away from him. Nothing else.
No.
It was good to see Johnny be bad, even though I don't really care for the name. Kicking butt, so it's bad.
Saito would wrestle sporadically for WCW up until about May. His last match in WCW, I think, might be ever, might have a random appearance one-off later, is itching enough. It's him and Chono, so Team Wolf.
Oh, good.
On WCW Saturday Night, not Nitro, for some reason, against Harlem Heat. So it's kind of a mixed bag of quality there.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Now, Bad's is a different story. So, as I mentioned, he briefly loses his title to Luger, but he gets it right back. However, he then wrestles a match in March where he quickly drops the title again. And that proves to be his last match because there was some sort of contract issue with WCW. So he loses his title on, I think it's Saturday Night again, of all places. Shouldn't be their high-profile show when Nitro exists, but they blow off a bunch of stuff there. And that's his last match for WCW. He will briefly come back on one Nitro, like be shown the audience to tease a match, apparently, but never actually comes out. He's gone to WWF to be the Wild Man, Mark Marrow.
Or the Wild Man, Mark Morrow, as they initially introduced him.
Mark Morrow Ronaldo. Yep. Number Johnny be bad, fortunately, in Starrcade run, John.
Yep.
Oh, well.
Was it bad while it lasted?
Yes. 2 Ds.
I like the begrudging response to that.
Yeah.
Yes. That was earned. I understand.
You know what? I am really glad they didn't do it like any like crazy stereotypes with like green powder or any of the.
True. Yeah, we don't get the mist or anything.
Yeah, you don't get any of that.
That is true. I'm kind of surprised that stuff doesn't show up tonight. We go back to the announcers, and Heenan says that he's pretty sure New Japan can still win it. Dusty and Tony criticize him for cheering for New Japan. Dusty says he needs to go get his rope, which, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Heenan insists that he's not cheering for New Japan and gives some really good innocent faces as Tony moves on to talking up Super Brawl. We get video clips and the Super Brawl logo, but nothing too exciting, except that the upcoming Super Brawl show is in Florida.
Hey.
And in fact, it actually took place at the Bayfront Arena in St. Petersburg.
Oh.
Go us.
Yeah. Tony throws to Gene, who is backstage with Lex Luger and Jimmy Hart.
Thank you very much, Tony Schiavone, with me. Of course, the total package, Lex Luger still to come, the triangle match, Jimmy Hart. Before we talk about that, let's talk about what's going on here. We've got a little 2-2 situation with WCW against New Japan Pro Wrestling. You seem to be happy. What's the deal with Kevin Sullivan?
Well, I guess you're talking about what happened when Chris Benoit was out there and Kevin kind of interfered in the match and cost him the lose. I guess it cost America to lose. Let me tell you something. Kevin Sullivan's got a short fuse.
Hey, how do you know that?
What do you mean, how do I know that? Let me tell you something, Mean Gene. 10,000 comedians out of work and you're trying to be one. He's got a short fuse. Dungeon of Doom, let me tell you something, Four Horsemen, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, baby.
All right, Lex Luger, let's talk about the triangle match. Sting, your good friend, that ain't your boy Ric Flair, and of course an opportunity for one of you to meet the Macho Man Randy Savage for the WCW World Heavyweight title.
That's what this great sport, that's what World Championship Wrestling is all about. The moment of truth has arrived. Year in and year out. You look at the top names in professional wrestling here in WCW. You look at Sting. You look at Flair. You look at Luger. The total package. Their names are synonymous with superiority at being the very best at what they do. All after one prize. And that's the WCW World Heavyweight title that the Macho Man is wearing around his waist. And everybody in World Championship Wrestling, everybody out there knows that I own you, Macho Man. You are a pathetic one-armed champion. I've said it before. I'm telling you right now, I am coming right at you because I've had you in the rack, Macho Man, many, many times. I've had your arm. I would have tore it right out of the socket if it wasn't for my good friend Sting. And now, Macho Man, every time I face you, I beat you. That's on your mind. But first things first, the triangle match, Jimmy, I gotta go this one alone, baby. You know, 10 years of friendship with Sting and I. It's me walking an aisle, just this one time, by myself.
What do you mean, all alone? Are you saying Jimmy Hart's not going to be in your corner?
Just this one time, Jimmy.
Listen,
it's cool. We've
talked this over, Mean Gene, but just remember one thing, Lex. I'm here for a long time, not a good time, baby. And Jimmy Hart's always managed champions because that's what keeps you around, baby. So I'm just saying, please bring me back the gold. That's all I'm asking.
Got a list of cliches here in my pocket, Jimmy Hart, if you want to use them. Yes, Lex.
We're cool, Jimmy. You know that. I know that. That's what's important. I don't care about anybody else out there. This one time that I walked that aisle alone because I got some unfinished business with the Nature Boy and Sting, best friends or whatever we have. We're going at it. If it's you and me, may the best man win. I've said it before. I'm going after the Macho Man. The total package is going to reign supreme.
Counting down to the triangle match tonight here at Starrcade. Short fuse, huh, Jimmy? Let's get back to the ring.
I gotta ask, why does Gene not think that Hart should know that Sullivan has a short temper? I mean, Hart's clearly been working with the Dungeon of Doom. He comes out wearing a Kevin Sullivan face jacket. It's like he seems clearly familiar with him, and that seems like something that would be pretty evident if you spent roughly 5 seconds with Kevin Sullivan.
This is brought up in a promo for World War III. Sullivan talks about it. He's only ever had one manager in his career, and that is Jimmy Hart.
Oh.
Which, as far as I could tell, is actually true.
Yeah, probably.
For once, the wrestling claim is accurate. Surprised me, too.
The Luger part of things I actually thought was pretty great. Luger effectively builds up the match and his opponents while making clear that he thinks he's the best of them. He's got the bad guy arrogance, and he's willing to associate with Jimmy Hart, who's clearly something of a dishonorable person.
Something has happened since last year, clearly.
But he cares enough about his friend Sting that he's willing to disassociate with Hart when facing his friend. So there's a different attitude to the promo whenever he mentions Sting, I think. There's much more respect that I get in Luger's tone there.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially compared to when he talks about the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and is just totally, I can beat you easily, I totally win over you every time. So some pretty complex character work here from Luger, and I think he pulls it off actually pretty well. He stumbles a little bit on lines here and there, but he's got a pretty complicated promo to work through, and he does a good job with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I had this weird thought, which is, what if you're in an alternate reality where, for whatever reason, Jimmy Hart can't go to WCW with Hogan, but they need somebody to be his manager, mouthpiece character. And they pick the next best thing in their minds, just due to name similarity, and he's managed by Jimmy Valiant.
Oh my gosh. No.
A terrible reality, but
no.
An interesting one. Jimmy Valiant wearing flashy jackets with the megaphone.
Do not threaten me with Jimmy Valiant coming back.
I thought you were going to go into like a Dusty manager.
Now, see, that I could get behind.
No, it's me. I'm just picturing Jimmy Valiant dressed like Jimmy Hart now. I don't know why.
No.
Believe me, no one would see that less than I do. But I just had that weird thought.
No, one person wants to see that less than you do. It's me.
I don't know. I think it's the lack of sleep, but Luger more and more reminds me of Dar, the Beastmaster, and I think that he
Yes.
should be doing these things with two ferrets and talking about they're going to seek out the Nature Boy.
Jimmy Hart kind of is like a ferret.
Yeah.
He could have had the ferret wrapped around his bicep like he has the string like people do.
Oh, there you go.
Be flexing in there, like smiling over his arm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go.
I know we're a little too far on this one, but that you can see it.
Yeah.
Our next match is Eddie Guerrero versus Shinjiro Otani with Sonny Ono. The referee for this match is Randy Eller. Otani looks kind of bemused as he walks down the ramp, and Tony builds up his amateur wrestling history. Dusty builds up Guerrero as pound for pound the best wrestler in the world. Incidentally, he's earlier mentioned on the show that Bobby Heenan is pound for pound the best wrestling announcer, which was an odd statement. Tony sells this as a clash of each organization's new generation, and he mentions that the two have actually feuded before in Japan. I love Guerrero's jacket. Not quite as much as most Sting jackets, but it's a good one. Sparkling red and white, big and bold. Very nice.
That jacket gets a lot of FaceTime.
Yes.
We'll discuss it afterwards.
Yeah. It does look a little bit odd that the jacket is white and red and his outfit is black and red, though.
Yeah, he basically, at this point, has two main outfits, since sadly he stopped wearing his Great America pants he used to wear.
Mm-hmm.
From AAA, they're amazing. But yeah, so he has two versions of the outfit, and that jacket goes with the one he's not wearing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I guess he didn't have a black and red jacket as cool as that, so he didn't wear it.
With this match determining who's going to be up 3-2, Dusty calls it a pivotable situation.
The ability to pivot, yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Makes sense.
The match itself can pivot. That's what that means.
Eddie gets an Eddie chant rather than a USA chant.
He does.
Already got a really good crowd connection here. Tony talks about Otani coming to wrestling shows dressed as Jushin Liger to get noticed by promoters.
So all those kids that do that as well, I mean, they're playing the whole time.
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah. It's signed so many people that worked every time.
Fast action as they trade locks and holds, both standing and on the mat. Otani pulls at Guerrero's mouth, twists his nose, and pulls his hair to keep control. Guerrero holds his own, but finally gets angry, stomping hard on Otani's face, then spinning on top of it. Otani comes back with a neat elevated leg lock, and they trade holds and acrobatic moves, including a leaping monkey flip by Otani, before Guerrero head scissors him, and Otani rolls out in frustration. Back in, Guerrero keeps control and hits a diving flip from the apron to the ring, and Heenan points out Guerrero has great acceleration on his moves. I agree, there's a sense of quick motion, how he does his dives in particular. It makes him look faster and more powerful. Guerrero gets a Boston Crab into a single leg, but Otani gets the ropes. Guerrero switches to strength and gets 2 counts off a huge powerbomb and an amazing brainbuster.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Yeah, that was wow. Big clothesline to Otani, and Dusty says that, rang his belly, then clarifies he meant bell, not another word for stomach. Otani dodges a corner clothesline and hits a magnificent springboard dropkick. Absolutely beautiful. Guerrero rolls out, and Otani follows with an equally beautiful springboard splash. Back in, Otani keeps control, but Heenan, via cheering, and Dusty note that he doesn't take the chances that he gets to go for the pin. Line of the night here, I think. Heenan asked Dusty, if he's Guerrero, what is he thinking right now? Dusty, quick as a whip, says, I'm thinking I lost a lot of weight, brother. Tony collapses into helpless laughter, as did I.
Yeah, I really wish they would do the back and forth cuts of the announcers.
Oh, yeah, I would have loved
Just
to see their faces on that. I bet Tony was doubled over.
Yeah.
Guerrero and Otani trade suplexes for 2 each, and Otani hits an awesome springboard spinning wheel kick, but pauses to taunt the crowd before going up top, and Guerrero gets a top rope hurricanrana for 2 and a crucifix powerbomb for a 2 3/4. Otani gets a leg lock. Guerrero makes the ropes, but Otani holds on until 4.5. Heenan says Otani might not understand the count, but then kind of saves it by saying that the ref should give Otani a grace period, like a count of 30 or 35.
Yeah.
I think the exaggeration kind of brings it back around.
Right. And I'd be more bothered by that if the story wasn't that he's clearly in favor of New Japan.
Yeah.
It's clear that he's trying to turn that into a way that he's blatantly wants them to get the advantage.
Yeah.
It walks that line pretty well.
They spill outside, and Guerrero hits a very safe slam on the concrete, then his own twisting springboard splash. Back on the apron, Guerrero tries to suplex Otani out, but Otani counters with his own into the ring. So wouldn't Guerrero have gotten DQ'd if he succeeded at that? I mean, he's suplexing him from inside of the ring out.
Maybe if he had also fallen on the floor, that would count and it'd be okay?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Another beautiful springboard dropkick from Otani to the back of Guerrero's head. Ow.
Yeah, there's no way to take that.
Otani, by the way, appears to have busted his nose and lips somewhere. I'm not sure when that happened, actually.
I think it's from the dive. I think he did
might
impact
be, yeah.
there.
Otani tries a full Nelson, but Guerrero counters with a Frankensteiner. But Otani rolls through for 2, only for Guerrero to roll it back over for 2, only for Otani to roll it over again for a 3 count and the win. Wow, what a finish. That put New Japan up 3-2. One more win and they take the World Cup. Otani smugly poses for the crowd as Guerrero despairs in the corner. Heenan says they've got to take their hat off to Otani for that win, and Tony reluctantly agrees. Thoughts on that match?
So it's an interesting one for me for a lot of reasons. I started watching wrestling when Eddie Guerrero was like at his peak as far as notoriety in America.
Mm-hmm.
He's come to WWF, he's, all this stuff happens. So I know him very well. I watched him from 2000 up until, unfortunately, he died. Otani, I have never seen before at all, like in any show, because my knowledge of New Japan is separate from my viewership of New Japan. I know more of them by reading than actually watching. So I see Otani walk out. Other than his weird sort of Top Gun jacket, he has like this blank expression I cannot read whatsoever. Between that and the fact that he's wearing black boots, black knee pads, and plain black trunks, which is normally what young lions, the people that are training in New Japan, wear because they haven't earned their character yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it's explained anyways. I just assumed he'd be really boring. Not necessarily he wouldn't be a performer, but just like he'd have no character. It'd be just a clinical wrestling guy with nothing. Thankfully, he really proved me wrong.
Yeah.
There's nice bit where he's heelish, like the nose grabbing stuff, taunting the crowd. He just really enjoys playing to this audience, which really surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's an Eddie Guerrero match with a fairly equal opponent, so there's no question everything has worked beautifully. There's really not like a moment that stands out as being really awkward or like a mistiming thing we've had in the previous matches where they'd be really good, but maybe this one thing. It's hard to really nitpick this match quality-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a point where Eddie gets a 2 count, and the ref... I remember it's funny because I'm watching this with you the first time. I'm saying that the ref is slow on that one, which is immediately parroted by, I believe, Tony, right?
I think Tony says it at one point, yeah.
That might have been
There's one slow count, yeah.
Flash forward to the end of the match, where that last 3 count feels a little fast to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's absolutely not their fault. They worked the match perfectly. But there's that little bit where I kind of wish there'd been some sort of story where like the ref gives a knowing look to Ono or he smiles or something, try and make it like he fast counted when he needed to and slow counted when it looked really worrisome. I think in reality it's just he knows that first one is not the 3 count and he's worried about actually hitting 3. And then when he does the finish, he's just really excited and does it fast.
Yeah.
So the fact that I'm nitpicking the ref count in a match should tell you something.
Yeah, and to be fair to him on that final one especially, he's got to do counts rapidly in a row for multiple bidding things, so I accept that it's hard to maintain your pace, especially in that situation.
But there's a noticeable spike between the second to last count and the last count.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I wish there was a story to that.
What a match. No, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it. It was awesome.
I may have seen it, yes.
Oh, good. No, I was really surprised by both of them. I am somewhat familiar with Eddie Guerrero, but I haven't seen him at this stage in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's some very quick movements by both sides, and I really did like Otani's heelish nature. Yeah, he was doing a good job of being arrogant and playing it up. Whatever the springboard vertebral dislocator or whatever you want to call it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I didn't think there would be any part of the match that would be better than that, because I do like the posing at the end, and he's like clearly giving Eddie some time to recover, catch his breath, because it's kind of hard to sell that sort of thing. Some of it's probably real.
Oh yeah.
The last, I know it was only like 5 seconds, but it felt like 30 because it seemed like everything slowed down for me. I was like, oh man, you countered that and countered that and countered that.
Yeah, just seeing the complexity of those moves.
Mm-hmm.
It was all quick. It was all smooth. It was unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really liked the match because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like the ending to this one is what they were going for with the Alex Wright one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shock ending, but because of the ability involved. But with the Alex Wright one, it doesn't come off quite like that. It just comes off as a little bit of downbeat after all the really big moves. Where with this one, they managed to do the shock ending as a big spot.
Right, because in that match, Kanemoto doesn't like counter a move and pin him.
Yeah,
he gets a fairly standard move and then rolls over and pins him.
Yeah, with this, it's like, oh my gosh, counter. Oh, it really literally comes out of nowhere in this amazing fashion.
For sure.
And I do like how the final position looks like Otani's just hanging out. He's just like, whatever, just like sitting up. It's like, oh, we're done with this. But it was amazing. I became a fan of both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you guys, I think this was brilliant. Guerrero and Otani were both at the top of their game here, combined some exceptional mat wrestling with hard-hitting power moves and some amazing high-flying acrobatics to put together a terrific spectacle. Those springboard moves in particular, I loved. Those were incredible. Otani in particular, honestly, just seems so confident every time he jumps up on the rope to go for a springboard. It's like there's no doubt, there's no shakiness, there's no needing to get his aim in or something like that. It's nice, smooth motion that looks perfectly springboard. It's just great. Guerrero's power always surprises me. He's a very agile guy, but he can just whip a guy up for a power bomb or a brainbuster in just a heartbeat. Very hot match, fast pace, some great intensity, and Otani in particular, as you guys were pointing out, was really good about interacting with the crowd. He made that part of the match storyline sometimes because he wants to show them up so badly that he'll pause and taunt them or something and make a mistake that gives Guerrero time to recover. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciated that about him.
And I like that he looks so unassuming and not intimidating in any way, and then just does crazy stuff.
It's a study in contrast that he looks like this generic or not intimidating wrestler, and then what he can pull off is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, the ending is picture perfect and had me on the edge of my seat. Really smoothly done, and an impressive spot to end a match that felt hard fought from beginning to end.
The thing with Eddie Guerrero, very early on in the match, this happens in most of his matches, the shoulder strap on, I want to say the left side, moves around. So it's just his one nipple is exposed. It's a weird thing to notice, but it stays that way for the entire match.
I was thinking of that. What's that one movie that we watched? The Ator, the Fighting Eagle, I think, where he has the chest plate thing that never stays positioned properly.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I would gladly watch this match again, but I will constantly notice that no matter how much I try to focus on everything else. I can't help it. In March, WCW would finally go, we should have a cruiserweight division. Then we have all these people around. We got Pillman, we've got Benoit, Malenko. Let's finally do that. So they decided to hold a tournament, the finale of which takes place in, of course, New Japan for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. Does that make sense? And is won by Otani.
Okay.
Who, in fact, beats Chris Benoit in the finals, which sounds like a really good match.
Yeah.
Let's see that now. As for Eddie, he would compete at the Best of Super Juniors tournament. That tournament seems really stacked with people. Those are people I know, so this, not counting Japanese wrestlers I'm familiar with. It has Dean Malenko, Jushin Liger, Chris Benoit, Shinjiro Otani, and Kanemoto.
Wow.
It's a lot in one tournament.
Okay.
You have no excuse to cover that, but I kind of want to see.
Yeah. We go backstage, and Mean Gene Okerlund intros WCW World Heavyweight Champion, the Macho Man Randy Savage, who is wearing a jacket and hat of every possible color.
All right, let's now go to Mean Gene Okerlund as New Japan leads 3-2.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say.
Again, gentlemen, I repeat, New Japan 3, WCW 2, Macho Man Randy Savage. It's all going to be up to you. If it gets beyond you, then it's going to be up to Sting here at Starrcade 95 for the World Cup of Wrestling in one of the most extraordinary international events I have ever been part of. Randy Savage, you've got a lot to think about. Tenzan, perhaps now in the international competition, and then after that, the triangle match.
Forget about the triangle match. One thing at a time. The pressure's on me, and then hopefully the pressure's on Sting. To infinity and beyond. 3-2, our backs against the door. You know what? I like being the underdog. I've been the underdog all my life, but that's okay. That's cool. And the Stinger, he's cool too. And you know what? I gotta admit something. Lex Luger, he put that guy in the torture rack. You know, it's a team type situation, and then it reverses itself to infinity and beyond. Breaking on through to the other side. I like that. I got chills up and down my spine. I'm wrapped into the moment. This is a moment in time, and I'm going to take advantage of it. Tenzan, you can't understand what I'm saying, but I'm coming to get you. Yeah.
I just got off the telephone just moments ago with the suspended Hulk Hogan.
What did he say?
He wanted to know what frame of mind you were in.
Tell him I'm in the zone. He knows what the zone's all about. That's what makes us different. That's what makes Sting different. That's what makes Lex Luger different. And difference is that it's 3-2, and I'm going in there to even the score. Stinger, be there for the USA, red, white, and blue. Yeah, I'm out of here. I can't say another word.
Thank you very much. The Macho Man Randy Savage is going into his matchup with Tenzan as New Japan leads 3-2. Right now, let's get you back up to the ring.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Good promo overall, I think. Macho focuses us nicely on the contrast between the team storyline of the World Cup and the open competition between some of the same people for the Triangle and World title matches. It's a neat contrast, and I'm glad it got such a highlight here. I love how mobile Savage is during his promos, too. He's just like constantly just moving around. Gene has to follow him with the microphone. You can definitely tell what year it is from his repeated "To Infinity and Beyond" lines. Toy Story came out in November 1995. I don't know about you guys, but I got a great mental image of Savage watching that in the theater with full Macho Man getup and carrying the big gold belt, which would have been great.
I was hoping he would like say Sting's got a friend in me or something like.
Oh yes! Oh, that would have been great.
And he's talking about the dog. I thought he was going to talk about Slinky Dog. It just never happened.
Who in this scenario is Slinky Dog? Is that Luger?
I guess. Yeah, maybe.
I don't. We don't have time for a full who's who in Toy Story as WCW.
Yeah.
Is the announcer Potato Head?
Oh, Mean Gene.
Oh, yeah.
That works. And Macho is another person who doesn't realize that this is WCW versus New Japan, not the USA versus Japan. But, you know, this show just can't keep that straight anyway.
It's amazing for as good a promo as Savage is. It's a shame he can't control the volume of his voice. It's a real medical condition that dozens of people have. Thank you, Will Ferrell. Peaks and valleys.
Yeah. Like that dude from, the guy from Harlem.
Yes, very much so.
It was delightful, enjoyable. I'd never expected him to say "To infinity and beyond," let alone twice.
Would have been even better if Sting was back with him and like kept pointing at him, yelling that you are a toy. Would that have helped?
No.
You are a toy, Randy Savage.
No, I do like the interaction and when he talks about other people that are out there, but it's all about Randy, and it needs to be Randy, so it's good.
Yeah.
I can't really... I know that he had some voice and modulation issues, but...
It affects dozens of people every year. It's true.
But I don't know. He has a certain cadence to the way he says things, or like rhythm. That's probably a better word.
Oh, yeah.
I just enjoy him.
my dad, as a kid, grew up in Downers Grove, Illinois. It's a suburb just outside Chicago. So if you're Downers Grove, you say you're from Chicago. It's that close. In fact, he was a kid. He played Little League. On his team was a young boy named Randy and a young boy named Lanny, whose father, a big, sweaty, hairy man, wearing like sweatpants and clearly wearing a wrestling singlet, having just probably come from a match, would be seated in the audience. So my dad, in fact, did play Little League Baseball with Randy Savage.
That's awesome.
Which is amazing.
That's cool.
Angelo Poffo is just sitting next to the crowd of, what we would now call soccer moms, basically. But my dad didn't know who Angelo Poffo was at the time because he was not watching wrestling. He's a kid.
Yeah.
At that point. But he remembers seeing that person there. Probably at the time thinking, who is this weird person that's in the audience all the time? And then later making the connection, oh, that's Angelo Poffo and because his sons are on the team I'm playing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's kind of awesome, man.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I need to see if he has any pictures from then. I hope he does. I haven't actually asked him about that.
That would be
If
great.
I can find them, I will definitely share them.
Yeah.
I love that. John, did you notice anything in the background during the first few interviews?
Mm-mm.
Oh, so you didn't notice Eddie Guerrero's jacket hanging nicely on a rack behind Sting and Luger?
Yeah.
No.
And Ono?
I didn't pay attention to that.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch it, it is in frame, center frame in the background. It's hanging on its hook, like its hanger, just waiting back there. Which means poor Eddie Guerrero was told he got to do an interview, so he put his jacket on, and then didn't need it for, 3 more matches?
Yeah.
So he just left it back there. And at some point, before his match, he ran back, grabbed it, put it on, so it's gone by the next promo.
Yeah.
But it is just hanging on the background, just going, hey, I'm back here.
Yeah. That's a sparkly red and white jacket.
Yeah.
Good placement.
Yeah. I would have liked it if one of the other wrestlers had tried it on when Sting just goes over and is like, oh, that's a sparkly jacket. That must be mine.
They all wore the jacket during the promo.
That would have been good move.
Yeah.
So our next match is Randy Savage versus Hiroyoshi Tenzan with Sonny Ono. Referee for this match is Nick Patrick. Tenzan has a pretty cool entrance outfit with a red robe and some cool horned headgear. It looks pretty intimidating. Interestingly, his robe has his actual name, Yamamoto, rather than his wrestling name, Tenzan.
That's true.
Yeah. Savage is extremely colorful. His entrance theme is a rock version of Pomp and Circumstance, one of my least favorite pieces to play in high school band. We had to play that for an eternity at every graduation ceremony, and the trombone part is so incredibly boring.
Would it have been better if someone was playing electric guitar with you, at least? You could listen to that?
Honestly, yes.
So they finally fixed the problem for you.
Yeah.
I used to bop it, and I get dirty looks from the conductor.
Yeah. You had to do something to make that part entertaining, right? I mean, it's just da 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 da.
Thank you.
Repeat that for about an hour, and you've got the experience of playing trombone for Pomp and Circumstance. The crowd goes wild for Savage. Savage takes off his coat to reveal a bandaged left arm. Heenan says that the damage Tenzan inflicts on Savage here could make it more likely that Savage will lose the title later tonight. Aside from a couple initial pushes on lockups, Savage gets no offense for the early portion of the match, taking a beating from Tenzan with big, hard strikes, headbutts, and clotheslines, and, a bit perplexingly, eye rakes. Savage finally gets a kick and some punches, but Tenzan shrugs them off and headbutts him down, then grabs a nerve hold. Savage twists Tenzan's nose, but Tenzan hits a spinning wheel kick and goes back to the beatdown. Savage rolls out, and Tenzan kicks his ass on the floor, too, and runs him into the ring post and barricade.
Consistency.
Yeah. Back in, Tenzan gets an elevated fireman's carry, then a falling headbutt from the top rope. Tenzan tries a moonsault, but Savage finally dodges and clotheslines Tenzan through the ropes to the apron. They fight over a suplex, and Savage gets Tenzan up, but drops him gut first on the top rope. I'm not clear on if that was a botch, but it looked painful. Savage goes up top and lands the big elbow drop with his good arm for the 3 count and the win to tie it up 3-3, leaving the fate of the World Cup to Sting versus Kensuke Sasaki. Thoughts on this match?
Okay, so before I get to the match, I have to point out one big issue I have with WCW as far as the whole World Cup thing goes. So first off, they don't show the World Cup at the beginning of the tournament. Like, it's not just like sitting in the entryway, people don't like walk by and like point at it. How they could have put it next to the announce table or something.
Right, yeah.
And shown it. This is, for all intents and purposes, could be the final match of this tournament. And the cup is nowhere to be seen.
Right.
The spray paint's still drying.
So, there's 2 plausible explanations. One is that WCW is so sure Randy Savage, their world champion, will win. They're not going to bother bringing the cup out, because this is locked up. We don't need to have that, because there's no reason to do a ceremony. The other option is, of course, that they know Randy Savage will win, because this is pre-planned.
Yeah.
And so we don't need to have the cup out there.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of giving things away by not having the cup out there for me.
A little bit.
And putting Sting at the end.
Yes. Putting that kind of big thing aside, I like the match a lot for what it is. It's a fairly short match, which basically is let's see what Tenzan can do.
Mm-hmm.
All his moves look nice. There's a nice crispness and sharpness to his strikes and his moves. He's not going to ever be somebody you could swap out for Otani with the gracefulness of his moves or just how seamless like his wrestling is. But what he does is look intimidating with that hair. He has a nice, lovely mullet with some blonde and a little red, some other color in there as well.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
There's other color like highlighting his Tennessee waterfall. I just really like his look. It's probably also the fact that, as I mentioned a couple of shows back with Vader, one of the big rites of passage in Japan is going to Ribera Steakhouse, which it is still today, by the way. So I see Guy wearing those super bright shorts, which seem to be inverse of the Saved by the Bell shorts Steve Austin wore, by the way. And I see the big Ribera horns on that. Now, I also see him come out wearing horns, so I know that's not why it's there, but I can't help make a connection.
Yeah.
It definitely is a very one-sided match for the most part. The finish is a little wonky. I think the idea is that Randy Savage is supposed to suplex him in, and that's a position for the elbow drop.
Yeah.
And to Savage's credit, as you mentioned, Savage makes sure to come down with his good elbow and not his bad elbow.
Yes, that's nice.
Which is a mix of kayfabe and probably his elbowism actually hurt to a certain degree, so it's smart for the story and smart for himself. So they try to sell in commentary that his injured arm gives out, and he makes the best of it by dropping on the ropes.
Yeah.
Tenzin gamely rolls in the position the other way. And Savage never really has a problem with the distance on his jump, so he makes it work fine. It's just a rare case where I think it's definitely a botch, but the way it plays out is covered well by commentary.
But the commentary is good at covering it up,
Yes.
and the 2 wrestlers are professional enough that they recover really fast.
But yeah, it's definitely a bit lopsided as far as the flow of the match. Savage hits 2 big moves and then wits a win. There is a brief bit where they mention how good Tenzin's moonsault is, and it is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And they say he may have the best moonsault in all of New Japan, which feels like a weird dig at Muta, who is not on this show.
Yeah.
Very famous for his moonsault, and currently IWGP World Champion, by the way.
And kind of a dig at, wasn't it Kanemoto that did
That's
it
true,
earlier
yeah.
in the night? Yeah.
I do think his was a little better, but yes. So I agree in that regard.
Oh, man. What happened to the Randy Savage that did that promo?
He wore himself out.
I've never seen that man get kicked around so bad. Land, air, and sea, or whatever, any part of the map. Tenzin was showing him how to get there, forcefully.
Yes, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I think it builds Randy up for finish and kind of sets the groundwork for, him being hurt and everything. It was just fun to watch Tenzin masterfully just push him around. And Randy's doing his best pinata impression with that fringe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just waiting for him to burst open and a bunch of confetti comes out.
Well, if he's a pinata, what comes out? Slim Jims.
Well, yes, obviously, yeah.
I mean, that's all that comes out.
Snap into it.
Tenzin looked so defeated at the very end and surprised, and so was I. Not that I was expecting Savage to lose, given the way they set up everything. It was such a big leap.
Yeah.
At the end. Because he went from being like this unstoppable force to, I'm too tired to lift my leg.
The elbow was just that effective.
Yeah.
He didn't even land the elbow. He ribs flashed him.
I mean, obviously, that's kind of, I think, how you're supposed to perform a move like that. If you actually hit the elbow on someone's chest at high velocity coming from the top rope, you would probably kill them. But
or at least hurt them.
They normally do a better job of picking the camera angle. Mm-hmm. Where in this one, yes, you get a clear shot of Savage clearly going completely over Tenzan and landing with his elbow on the opposite side of his body. So it's his ribs that land on Tenzan, really. If they filmed it from the side or something instead, you wouldn't have caught it.
I wouldn't even have caught it if they didn't do it in slow motion at the very end. And especially if you're attending and you're 30 feet away, it's okay, you landed on him.
Yeah, you won't notice there. So
yeah. But it was a good match. I don't know what happened to the energy. Randy, he never recovered from his promo until the very end.
I can't call this a good match on my part.
Why not?
It's interesting, but the one-sidedness just really, really got to me with this one. Tenzan just beats the heck out of Savage for almost the entire match. And yeah, his strikes do look vicious, but for me it got monotonous really fast. The ending just feels so out of nowhere too. It's just Savage suddenly hits like 3 moves, one of which is a botch, and wins. I mean, it's a botch that they cover, but
it's a botch with impact at least.
Yeah, but he gets 3 moves and then just wins. And Tenzan's supposed to be this like hard guy that is really tough and brutal and everything. And it doesn't even bother me that Savage suddenly wins with the elbow drop. It more bothers me that Savage manages to, on just like 2 additional moves, stun Tenzan enough that he can get the elbow drop. Where I was thinking we were maybe in for a Sting Vader kind of situation where it's like Savage starts a comeback, after tiring Tenzan out by getting punched in the face repeatedly.
Could be rope-a-dope strategy, yeah.
But it doesn't feel like that. You don't get to that point with it. So I did not really like this one. Tenzan does have a really nice moonsault, like we were discussing. His spinning wheel kick is also quite nice.
It's a surprise, yeah.
Savage's top rope elbow is, of course, wonderful. Just really beautiful. There just wasn't a lot to this to me, and it felt kind of disappointing. I did appreciate that it was something different, but it was so one-sided that it felt like it just kind of should have ended with Tenzan winning, but they can't have him win because then you don't get a Sting match, and that would be horrible. So
it was no pomp in all circumstance?
Yeah, pretty much.
There's a New Japan show, I believe it's around March, where there's a rematch between the two, so maybe I'll watch that and see if that strikes your fancy a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it may be a factor of injuries or time constraints or things like that, so I'd be interested in seeing another attempt. We cut back to the announcers, and Tony tries to build up the upcoming Sting match, as Heenan appears to not be paying attention. Tony taps him on the shoulder, and Heenan goes into a full-on slapstick comedy routine, dropping his notes, knocking over his chair, trying to gather things up in a huge mess, and knocking his own headset off.
Yeah, he goes full vaudeville.
Yeah. Tony and Dusty flat out lose it and break down laughing, and Tony just kind of manages to fight off the laughter long enough to throw to Gene. Gene is clearly having a good laugh as well as they cut to him, but he gets himself under control and shills the hotline. 1-900-909-9900. Gene says the score is 3-all, and brings in short-haired Ric Flair in a pink Ric Flair's Gold's Gym shirt.
Gotta plug that gym.
The score is 3-all. This international competition for the World Cup of Wrestling is everything we have anticipated. The Nature Boy Ric Flair has slyly been sitting back and watching all of this. Ric Flair, come on in. Happy New Year to you as 11-time former WCW World Heavyweight Champ. This crowd out there in Nashville in the arena is hanging from the rafters in anticipation of the final match of the international competition, then on to the triangle match.
Great conception. Japan versus the USA, a first in WCW, brought it to this world of professional wrestling. But tonight, let's face it, we're talking about the most coveted trophy in all sports, the one and only World Heavyweight Championship belt. And tonight, as the Nature Boy Styles, woo, and profiles, Sting, you and Luger have to remember to be the man. Think about it like this. You've got to beat the man. You both will have wrestled. The Nature Boy will be fresh. He'll be invigorated, and he will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that right here in Nashville, woo, with the bright lights, Dolly Parton to my left, some very lovely lady to my right, I will win the World's Heavyweight Championship, styling, woo, and profiling.
Thank you, Nature Boy Ric Flair. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, still to come, the triangle match, the Nature Boy, Sting, and Lex Luger, the winner of that one, will be taking on the Macho Man Randy Savage for the WCW World Heavyweight title. 3-3 as we go to the ring.
I love him just repeatedly wooing as Gene tries to throw to the next match.
It really reminded me of the bit from Futurama, where Bender becomes a human. He dies from the over-excess of like a week of binge drinking, eating, and everything. He's like literally a giant round ball of a person. And they realize that he died before the big party. Like, but he said woo. Like, no, that's air escaping from his fat. And as they're rolling him out, you hear woo as he's going by. That's all I can think of when he does that now. Woo!
Short but good promo from Flair, who effectively talks up the triangle match and the advantage that he has. Luger and Sting fought in the World Cup, or Sting will fight in the World Cup now, but Flair hasn't. So in the triangle match, he'll be fresh. Well, they'll have to deal with injuries. Yeah, fresh. Well, they'll have to deal with injuries and expended energy. Nice angle, and he sets it up well here. And I think it's our first stylin' and profilin', and our first actually audible to be the man you've got to beat the man.
TM.
Yeah. Flair did say that at Starrcade 89, but it was drowned out mostly by the end credits music.
Yes. He should have brought up the gym war, because obviously we know Luger and Sting co-own one.
Main Event Fitness, I think it's called.
Main Event Fitness.
Yep.
In Atlanta, GA. Hotlanta. Classic Flair XS in a nice tiny package.
Yep. That's just very short, but very packed.
Yes. It's like you only have a little soda left in the can, but it's joke cola.
Yeah, it was short-ish and sweet. I did find it funny that he didn't know who was going to be standing to his side. He's like,
yeah.
Whoever else.
Yeah, it's like he clearly has the start of a thought there. Like, I can say Dolly Parton for this side, and then he starts it clearly thinking I'll think of another lady's name by the time I reach the second sentence, and just doesn't. Just like, whatever. Just go on with it.
And Gene for his part doesn't go, oh, you mean like so and so?
No, yeah.
He had no one there. He's like, nope.
Nope.
You're on your own, buddy.
Yeah.
He looks weird with his haircut too.
It always looks a little weird to me with the short hair. I definitely prefer the long hair Ric Flair look.
It's funny, too, because the part of that whole thing of him leaving was Jim Herd wanted him to cut his hair, make kind of a character, and yada yada. He's now back in WCW after all that folded with short hair.
Yes.
Maybe as a slap in the face, Jim Herd.
Yeah.
He went through a crisis and shaved his head, and that's what grew back.
There you go. Our next match, and the final match of the World Cup of Wrestling, is Sting versus Kensuke Sasaki with Sonny Ono. Referee for this match is Randy Eller. Ono shows off Kensuke Sasaki's U.S. heavyweight title, which he won from Sting. Sasaki has a truly badass leather jacket with flame patterns. The sleeve bears the words, "The God of Fire," and on the back there's an intimidating figure with blue skin bearing a sword and surrounded by flames. I tried to see, there's a word underneath it, but I couldn't get a really good, clear shot of the whole thing to try and look up what the figure's supposed to be. Anyway, it's an amazing jacket. We get a shot of the World Cup, now sitting in the middle of the entrance ramp. Yeah, as you pointed out earlier, Al, it's really odd that it wasn't their last match, too, since they're clearly putting it out there now to highlight that, this could be the last, this is the last match, but the previous match could have been the last match of the competition if Savage had lost.
Yes. At least unlike the ring they gave to Sting, we know it exists at the time of him winning.
That's true. At least they are handing out the World Cup this year rather than next Starrcade. Slight improvement. Sting comes out with a U.S. flag and a super glittery pink and green-yellow jacket and black, orange, and yellow face paint. Again, we're kind of mixing messages here. I think he either should have left the flag out to keep it WCW only, or just gone whole hog with it and worn red, white, and blue jacket and face paint.
Which he's done before.
Yeah. Everyone else is kind of calling this USA versus Japan, so he might as well have jumped on the bandwagon.
You could have a half and half flag where it's WCW and then the American flag.
Well, that would have gone over like a lead balloon.
I mean, they would have tried it.
Yeah. It's also kind of weird to me that his face paint and jacket don't match. They don't always, but he's normally a little bit better at color coordination, and they kind of clash in this case. Sasaki gets the better of an initial brawl, but Sting fights back and hits an early Stinger splash. Sasaki counters a second try into a one-handed bulldog. The crowd chants for Sting, and Sasaki mocks Sting with his own, kind of sad, attempt at a Stinger call.
Yeah, if they could supposed to be insulting the crowd, but really just kind of cry for help when it's Yeah.
Did it sound like the mouse, John?
Oh, no.
No? Not quite squeaky enough?
She sounds more like a lamb now. It's weird. When she's really distressed, she sounds like a lamb.
Aw.
It's not awe-inspiring. It's kind of sad.
Okay.
You just want to help.
Sasaki lands clotheslines, but Sting dodges one and hits his high-leaping dropkick and clothesline to take Sasaki out of the ring. Heenan insists that his constant cheerleading for Sasaki is just that he's a broadcast journalist with an objective viewpoint.
His objective is that he wants New Japan to win.
Yeah, there you go.
That's an objective.
Sasaki floats over a suplex back in and hits a mighty power slam and brainbuster. He poses for the crowd, but they boo. So he goes up on the ropes and tries again and gets booed even more. The crowd chants for Sting, then for the USA as Sasaki uses locks and strikes, and then applies the Scorpion Deathlock to Sting. Sting struggles, but finally powers out of the hold to big cheers. Sasaki gets a leg takedown, but a second attempt earns him an enziguri from Sting, but Sasaki recovers faster. Sasaki tries a running slam, but Sting slips free and hits a clothesline, kick, and one-handed bulldog, then gets the Scorpion Deathlock. Sasaki drags himself towards the ropes, but Sting pulls him back to the middle of the ring and sits down, and Sasaki gives up to give Sting the win and WCW the World Cup at a final score of 4-3. WCW's other competitors come running out, all but Macho and Benoit wearing shirts with the US and Japanese flags on them. Macho wears his own Macho Man shirt, and Benoit wears an awesome Four Horsemen shirt that I would love to own.
I keep looking.
Yeah. A chant of USA goes up. Seriously, nobody gets that WCW is not Team USA, do they? It has world in its name, people.
Yeah.
Thoughts on this match?
I'm a little mixed on this match overall. It's one of the ones where the strong points are pretty high. It's just I have other aspects to think about. So Sting is in classic form here. He's got his energy. He's got his great drop kick. Like, his jump is, like, higher than the top rope, right?
Yes, he clears the top rope easily from a standing jump.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sasaki does have nice bits of character where he's just sort of mocking the crowd, but, like, during the actual wrestling, he doesn't have that. It's basically like he was told he's got to get mad at the crowd, so he does that, but it's clearly separate from his wrestling. There's a little disconnect for me there. It's not like Otani where it's mixed in with his performance. It's sort of like he's wrestling and then it's like, oh, right. I'm like, guys. It's done well, but it feels separate to me. The problem for me is that the match is kind of short.
Yeah.
The whole part where Sasaki gets him over the shoulders, and it seems like he's going to start a next sequence where they fight out of the corner, but instead he changes his mind, I guess, and tries to do that stampede move out of the corner, but then gets countered into the finish.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they cut a few minutes out of the match, and it just goes right from that point to the end.
Sting always has a good performance. It's nice to see him get pushed around too. Not like Randy Savage was, pushed around, but some of those clotheslines were just ridiculous. Especially like they do like 3 or 4 in a row, and Sting just immediately pops back up and then drop kicks. You can definitely see during this match where the tide's turning. There's not like any ambiguity. It's not like they just get a lucky move. No, it's like always sets of 3 or 4 things as they battle back and forth. It makes it interesting. I didn't like the ring outs. Kind of slowed up the action, but overall, a decent match.
Yeah, for me, fun match, but like you were saying, Al, very short.
Mm.
I think they make the best of it, but they don't get enough time to really tell a complete story. That said, they do a good job of working in what they can. I like that Sasaki used Sting's own moves against him. It's not just the Scorpion Deathlock, but he actually also uses the one-handed bulldog almost exactly the same way Sting does, which was nice. And, of course, he mocks the Stinger call, though he could have done a better job with that.
I like the commentary when they use this Deathlock on him. He's like, if anyone knows how to get out, it's going to be Sting. So
right, exactly. They do a good job of setting that up. For as short a match as this is, they do a really good job of getting across the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
The match felt pretty heated, and I got a sense of the history between the two. Sasaki gets across a feeling of confidence. He's beaten Sting before, and he can do it again. Sting feels like he's taking this very seriously. He's aware that he has to prove he can really beat Sasaki after a previous failure. So he tries to put Sasaki away really fast, starting with the Stinger Splash, but that makes him make mistakes. But even though he's on defensive a lot of the match, it never feels one-sided like the Savage match did. It just feels like this is a good storyline idea that doesn't get quite fully developed because they have to cram everything into the little window of time they have rather than getting to let things play out fully.
Mm-hmm.
It was still fun, but I'd like to see this storyline done with more time.
You okay with it ending as a submission?
Oh, yeah. I loved that ending, actually. I loved Sting
dragging him to the center.
They really fight for it. That's, again, a point where this match really got across the storyline they were going for of Sting as the master of the Scorpion Deathlock, where Sasaki is trying to do it but isn't as good at it.
Mm.
With Sting's able to power out of Sasaki's, and Sasaki tries a different counter because he can't manage to power out, but Sting is wise to that, pulls him back from it, and locks it in even harder.
Mm. Yeah.
It really looked definitive, so I liked that.
So, as you mentioned briefly at the beginning, there's a dark match after this show featuring Kazuki Sasaki.
Yes.
From my understanding, Sasaki, in the lead up to this show, made it pretty clear to WCW that he was not interested in wrestling on, say, Nitro and other shows, being a regular champion and defending the U.S. title. He made it clear he wanted to do it in Japan, and he was less interested in their shows. They were not happy with that, but they found a workaround. His match after this is him defending the title against the One-Man Gang. One-Man Gang gets the pinfall, and the ref counts it, but then the ref is told that the foot is on the rope, whereas the foot is outside to some degree. So the match is then restarted, and Sasaki beats One-Man Gang, successfully defending his title, and leaves. WCW then decides, when they want to air this match, that ending part where the match is reversed and restarted didn't happen. It's just chopped off. So now One-Man Gang has successfully defeated Sasaki and is the U.S. champion from this point going forward. They control the edit, and they control reality.
All right. Oh. They are controlling transmission.
Mm-hmm.
They control the horizontal and the vertical.
Correct.
All right, gentlemen, I thank you very much. This has got to be truly one of the most historic evenings I can recall in the ranks of professional wrestling. Here in Nashville, Tennessee, tonight, in front of this capacity crowd, the chant of USA USA and WCW as WCW wins 4-3 the World Cup of Wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for these men. Sting, Chris Benoit, the total package, Lex Luger, Alex Wright, Johnny B. Bad, and Eddie Guerrero. Gentlemen, I want you to take this cup, and tonight somewhere in this great city, we can sip champagne and be proud of World Championship Wrestling and this great sport. Fill her up, gentlemen. Fill her up. Sting, I've got to tell you, this crowd electrified, and you certainly excited them in this final match of the international competition. You've still got some work to do.
I sure do, but I just got one thing to say. USA!
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say I hope this becomes a tradition at Starrcade, because certainly this is one of the most prestigious international events, like the Ryder Cup in golf, like the Stanley Cup in hockey, like the World Series itself. Truly, this is a memorable moment for these 7 men. Tony, Bobby Heenan, and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, you can really appreciate this. Gentlemen, let's get back to you.
Benoit and Wright are right there, Sting. Come on. Oddly, Gene congratulates the WCW wrestlers and lists off the WCW competitors, but he misses listing Macho Man because he's just kind of suddenly not there anymore. It's disappeared at some point. I never saw when he left.
I didn't even notice Randy was gone either.
I only noticed it because Gene doesn't say his name. And I was like, wait, he didn't say Randy Savage. And then I looked and I'm like, oh, Randy Savage is not in the ring. Where did he go? So, yeah, that was odd.
Oh, that was a tiny puff of smoke where he was once standing.
Yeah. This plays up the historic angle a bit much, and despite Gene's hopes, yeah, they're not making this a tradition. But still, it was kind of cool to see everybody out to celebrate, and Luger and Sting holding the trophy together as a nod to the friendship storyline.
It's definitely a bad idea to bet against Sting winning tournaments on Starrcade.
Yes.
Because, let's see, he won the Iron Man singles tournament, correct?
Mm-hmm.
He won the King of Cable tournament,
mm-hmm.
which also got him a cup, by the way. He won first Battle Bowl.
Yep.
And now he won this.
Yeah. Yeah, he's 4 for 5 then.
Yeah.
Because he missed the second Battle Bowl. He didn't win, but otherwise he's good.
Yeah, and to be fair, in a show where you can win 2 trophies, winning one of them is still good.
Yeah, that's still good.
Yeah. I'd say it's a wash if you win one of the 2 trophies in one night, yeah.
Yeah.
The cup is very elaborate.
Yes. It's very large.
I give them that. It's not like I guess they were going for like the Stanley Cup kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
But when they're announcing it, it makes it sound like something more like soccer.
Yeah. The announcers talk up the win. Tony and Dusty are happy, while Heenan looks depressed. Heenan says he's going to have to give the Lexus back. Tony throws to a video package on the upcoming Triangle match.
Triangle Man.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
3 men. 1 title. 3 of the top superstars in the history of WCW will vie for the chance at facing WCW World Champion Macho Man Randy Savage. The Macho Man won the title in World War III when he was the last man left in the ring. Or was he? The replay footage error could not show the final verdict. However, Savage is the champion. The contenders? Lex Luger. He returned to WCW in September and made his intentions clear.
I'm here for one reason, and one reason only, to take that belt.
Luger claims he is the uncrowned world champion with previous victories over Savage, as well as many bizarre incidents with his manager Jimmy Hart. The other, Sting, who has kept his friendship with Luger intact throughout Luger's bizarre actions over the past few months in WCW. However, many have been wondering about Sting. As one of WCW's most popular athletes, he has been involved in many bizarre incidents as well, causing many, including Hulk Hogan, to question his allegiance.
I just want to know, what's the deal with Luger, and you know what side you're on?
However, none can question Sting's purpose. He wants to regain a title he has held in the past, regardless of friendships. Finally, there is the nature boy Ric Flair, a man with a definite advantage. Luger and Sting will wrestle earlier in the night during the World Cup of Wrestling competition. Flair merely has to wait until the end of the night. He will be fresh. He will be ready. A coin toss will decide which two men will begin the triangle match. A man can tag out at any time. However, the man who scores the pinfall will go on to meet Savage. Will Luger turn on Sting just as he has everyone else in WCW? Will Sting's hatred of Flair consume him and cause him to be eliminated? Or will Flair's experience and readiness pay off? The fate of WCW's elite hangs in the balance, and an anxious world champion awaits the conclusion of one of the most anticipated matches in WCW history.
I like how they inverted or changed the triangles around so it is not the Triforce or an inverted Triforce or any sort of real pyramid.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I understand if they rotated all the way around and then they did the triangle like this, but at the top they kept it one way and then put the points down on the bottom too. It was weird.
Mm-hmm. You think you could rely on WCW to, if nothing else, know what a pyramid looks like? Alas, no.
No.
Or how pyramid work, for that matter, given how confusing this is.
I thought this did a pretty good job, though, of covering the people involved in the world title angle and the honestly fairly complex story that's been going on around them. There's a lot of ridiculous Dungeon of Doom stuff going on in WCW right now, but the Sting and Luger angle and how it affects Sting's alliance with Hogan and Savage is actually pretty interesting, and Sting and Luger perform it well. It's neat to see Sting in a situation where he's torn between friendship and his usual solid good guy role, and it feels like it adds some depth to his character while not breaking away from the Sting that we know and love.
It's interesting how Hogan's still mentioned here, even though they wrote this whole show around squeezing him just out of the way, but you still have to hear him at least once in there.
Well, I mean, it's an important part of the Sting and Luger stuff still.
Mm-hmm.
At least it explains what happens in the triangle match better than a lot of the other matches.
Yeah. It's a match with some unusual rules, so it's good to actually have a little bit of coverage of that before the match begins.
It's unusual even in the context of what a triangle match previously was in WCW.
Yeah.
The last time they was there was involved Sting, Big Bubba, and Vader. I think that's the last one before this. Where it was just an elimination match. So two people wrestle, and then who was left wrestled the next guy.
Can the third interrupt the pin?
No, in that one it was actually two people straight wrestled a normal match, and then whichever one won that one, the next guy would then come down the ramp. Where in this one, it's all three guys out there, and there's tag rules.
Apparently.
Yes.
And not elimination, which would make it more interesting.
Yes.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you're tired, you can tag out, but then you have no possibility of winning, and you have no guarantee that anyone's going to tag you in.
Yeah. So the rules of the triangle match, here's what I've gathered from the video package and from the match itself. It's a three-way match, but only two men are in the ring at a time. The third man stays on the apron and can be tagged in by either competitor to switch off. One pinfall or submission wins the match, but I think if someone is disqualified or counted out, that person's eliminated and the remaining competitors can still keep fighting. It's a pretty confusing match design, and I much prefer three-way matches where everyone's in the ring at once. It's less confusing to explain, and there's interesting double team spots that can happen then too. Our next match is Sting versus Lex Luger versus Ric Flair in a triangle match to determine the number one contender for Randy Savage's WCW World Heavyweight Championship. The referee for this match is Nick Patrick. Luger, as promised earlier, comes to the ring without Jimmy Hart. He gets some nice pyro as he flexes. Flair is out second in a golden sparkly robe. Flair spots the guy in the crowd dressed as Hulk Hogan and points and yells at him for a moment. Sting is out third, sans jacket, and Heenan builds up that if he wins the triangle match, he's going to end up having to fight 3 matches in a row. That's an interesting point, isn't it? Sting's position in the World Cup meant that if one side reached 4 points early, he'd have gone into the triangle match fresh. But since it went down to the wire and required all 7 matches, Sting had to wrestle right before the triangle match, which is right before the world title match. In contrast, Luger had the 3rd match in the World Cup, so no matter how things went, he'd have to have that match. But because of its placement, he's had time to rest.
Yeah.
And Flair, of course, didn't have to wrestle at all before this.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 3 different conditions. Kind of thought that was a cool contrast over the course of the night. Either Sting or Luger, I couldn't tell which, knocks Flair down before we've even started, and Flair goes after Sting when his back is turned. There's an odd bit as Tony says they'll have a coin toss with 3 coins, and whoever's coin comes up different from the others will start on the outside. But we don't see the coin toss, and Patrick just orders Luger outside, motioning like it was the result of a coin toss. But I definitely didn't see a coin toss. Did either of you?
No, I didn't either.
No, I had to toss my own.
What'd come up?
Side. I mean, edge.
I thought I knew him, Al.
I know.
Sting and Flair start, and Flair struts and gives a woo. Sting responds with a stinger call to cheers. Tony brings up the Starrcade 84 Flair vs. Dusty match that was for $1 million. Dusty says he'd had the money spent before the match, so maybe that explains why he was so angry at Joe Frazier.
I think we all shared that rage, to be fair.
Sting dominates with power and goes right to the Scorpion Deathlock, but Flair gets the ropes before he can lock it in. Flair rolls out to recover. Back in, Flair focuses on Sting's arm with hammerlocks, strikes, and snaps across the ropes and wears Sting down, but after a chop in the corner, Flair struts, but Sting recovers and walks along behind Flair, then does his own strut when Flair turns around, before hurling Flair half across the ring. Great spot. Love how sarcastic Sting is again with the strut.
Yeah.
He's just making a great face the entire time. I loved it.
He's happy.
Yeah. Sting with a drop kick and press drop, and he hits corner punches, stopping to bite Flair. What is with that lately? Flair rolls out and tries using the barricades, but Sting just fires right back, and Tony says that Sting's got a rush of adrenaline, and Flair can't hurt him. Dusty asks if he said Russian adrenaline. I love Dusty Rhodes. Back in, Flair begs for mercy, but Sting hurls him across the ring. Flair dodges a dropkick and drops a knee, and he's back in control, methodically taking Sting apart and taunting and beckoning to Luger. Heenan asks if Sting might be playing possum. And Dusty has apparently never heard that expression in his life, asking how you would play possum. Do you go up in a tree and yell, "I'm a possum, I'm a possum"?
He's heard all the other sayings.
Oh my gosh.
Never mind if that was accurate. The hunter would be, hey, wait, that possum could talk.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah. Luger takes Flair's bait and tries to charge in, and Patrick goes to usher him out, so Flair chucks Sting over the top rope to the poorly positioned ring steps and beats him up outside. Back in, a knee drop earns Flair 5 2 counts and a 1 count. He gets 6 pin attempts off of 1 move.
Jeez.
Sting recovers, pelting Flair with strikes and building to a superplex for 1, as Luger lunges into the ring, and Sting jumps to his feet to confront him. We get a stare down, and Luger backs away to the apron, but Flair attacks Sting from behind, but knocks him near Luger, who tags in. Luger flexes and roars at Flair, who begs for his life and tries to flee. Luger carries him back. Flair hits a cheap shot and briefly stuns Luger, but tries to shoulder block him and just bounces off. Twice. Luger overpowers Flair and gets a Flair flop, but Flair pokes Luger's eye and viciously strikes his knee. Flair rolls out and goes to grab a chair while Patrick is looking, so Patrick looks over at Sting for no reason, so Sting tries to get in so Patrick has a reason to be distracted.
Not the best Nick Patrick moment.
Yeah. Flair nails Luger in the knee with the chair, then builds to and gets the figure 4 using the ropes. Sting tries to tell Patrick, but Flair acts innocent. Flair gets several 2 counts, but slaps Luger, who fires up and rolls him over. Flair breaks the hold. Luger comes back with a suplex for 2, and a top rope move by Flair goes as usual.
Yeah.
Luger no-sells chops and a shoulder block, and Flair backs off and tags Sting. The crowd gets really excited. Luger and Sting shake hands, and the crowd actually boos at that, wanting to see the fight. We get clean breaks in the corner to start, and Luger is the first to land a strike, even running Sting into the turnbuckles. They get more aggressive with harder punches and clotheslines, and Flair tries to sneak in a cheap shot, but Sting is wise to him. Sting knees Luger in the face, and Luger responds with a screaming clothesline to knock him flying, then drops Sting on the top rope and steps on his throat. The announcers do a really great job highlighting the escalation in violence between the friends, and how Luger in particular is bending the rules. Both counter jumping moves. Luger drops vicious elbows, but only gets 2, and Sting slugs Luger down for the Scorpion Deathlock, but Luger grabs the ropes. Patrick tells Sting to break, and Luger takes advantage of Sting's distraction to slug Sting in the little stingers. Reflexes, Heenan says.
Yeah. Happens to me all the time.
Luger gets overeager, and Sting rolls him up and sunset flips him for 2 counts, then counters a suplex into his own snap suplex. Tony nicely points out that they've been avoiding Flair's corner so he can't tag in, and indeed, Sting clearly intentionally whips Luger away from Flair's corner a moment later. Stinger splash, but Luger dodges a second and gets the torture rack, but accidentally hits Patrick with Sting's boot. Patrick visibly shields himself early.
He's just very smart. It just wasn't smart enough.
Yeah. Flair charges and hits Luger's knee to send him out, then chucks Sting over the top rope. Flair nicely wakes up Patrick, who starts counting. Sting gets up, but Luger grabs his arm, and both are counted out to give Flair the win. Sting checks on Luger, who's still holding his knee. Sting looks irritated, but Luger says something to him, still in pain. Sting asks why Luger grabbed his arm. Jimmy Hart runs out and confronts Flair, getting in his face. Ref Randy Anderson comes out to check on things, and Hart talks to Flair, starting to look less like he's confronting him and more like he's arranging some kind of partnership. Thoughts on this match?
Covering the obvious stuff right away, the rules are confusing.
Yes.
The fact that you can tag out, which means you can't win the match, in theory, anyways, is odd, to say the least.
It's strategy.
Yeah.
Strategery.
Stratego.
I don't have a third one, sorry.
I win.
Planning.
That's how that game works. I have no played Stratego. Anyways, the other thing is the match is kind of too long. Maybe it's because it's basically 3 matches sort of squished together.
Believe me, my show notes agree.
We've gotten a Sting Flair match on, at least 2 Starrcades? Different years to close the show out?
Yeah.
So it's not like this is a new match. We definitely had 2 Luger Flair matches. One wasn't main event, obviously. It was during the multi-tournament show. And one was actual main event. So that match isn't exactly fresh either. If they had made this an actual triple threat match and sort of play with the rules that way, I would have at least gotten something more out of it. Because you could have played up Sting and Luger teaming up, but then, as usual, one goes for a pin, and that part, you could even play the idea that at that point, Luger might team with Flair against Sting, and his really betrayal. All this sounds really interesting. And we described the sort of inner workings of the match, about how these two won't fight against each other, and Flair taking advantage. It sounds interesting. It's just, the match is, 28 minutes long?
It's a very lengthy match, yeah.
So yeah, it's too long for this point in the show, and just for what it is, because it is 3 matches put together. And obviously, I take a little issue with the way the finish works, given that the whole point is you have to tag in, because you're not tagged in, you can't win the match. So of course, Flair makes sure to somehow win while not tagged in the match at all. Just a giant screw you to the rules, apparently.
Yeah.
I actually have to say I kind of like the concept of the ending. I think it's
outside the box, literally.
Yeah, I mean it is, but there's some execution problems like Patrick bumping rather poorly for it and all. But I actually like it as an indication of Flair as the ultimate wily wrestling villain. That this is a match where the announcers all night are telling you the problem with tagging out in this match is you can't possibly win outside the ring. And then Flair, the ultimate wily wrestling villain, finds a way to win outside the ring. I get that it's a weird thing, but I think it didn't bother me because the match itself was such a weird concept to begin with that I think for me that ending actually worked quite well. I like that it also, from a storyline perspective, really did a good job of adding further intrigue to the Sting and Luger stuff. Sting losing specifically because Luger grabbed his arm. But you're not sure, wait, did Luger grab his arm to stop him from winning? Or as he's lying there grabbing his knee afterwards, is it because he's hurt and he just instinctively reached out to a friend?
Right. Well, and I think my point in it overall is just, like I was saying before, when you're describing what this part of the match was supposed to mean, what this supposed to mean, how it plays the dynamic, that sounds interesting. It's just the way it ultimately plays out for me is not as interesting as it should be. It's going back to where Flair is pretending to be the Black Scorpion. In theory, the idea that Flair becomes a different character to wrestle Sting and his outfit and all this nonsense with the magic is interesting, but the match itself is just not that interesting to me, unfortunately. It's kind of the same thing where describing the idea is, oh, it's interesting, but then you watch it, I guess. It didn't sell me as much as it should have.
Okay.
I get that it's supposed to be a cheap finish, intentionally so, to make you mad at Flair. If the match was paced differently, and then that happened, I'd accept that, but as a combination of things, I don't like it as much.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you both that it was a long match, but I think that it might have something to do with Flair being fresh, and I'm sure he would have negotiated to have some screen time.
True.
He loves long matches, that's for sure.
And when Luger and Sting, it's been hyped up to this point, they want to make sure that they don't diminish that portion of the match, even if it is Flair versus Sting and Flair versus Luger. Those are the other matches, but the one that they're really hyped for is Luger and Sting, so they probably extended that due to the crowd.
And I think on a certain level, to your point there, they probably extend the earlier segments a little bit too to make you wait for that. Because they know when these two get tagged in against each other, that's our most interesting situation right there. So we want to make sure that we build to that effectively. Maybe they overdo it, but
I understand what you're saying. I just think they overdo it for sure.
And I do think that Luger pulling Sting at the very end could be any number of things. It could be helping himself try to get up and get back in the ring with him. It could be, I got knocked out and I don't know what count it was going on.
Yeah.
It could be he really just didn't want Sting to win because, they had just been fighting. If it can't be me, it's got to be, might as well be Flair, As a cliffhanger or kind of thing. It's like, Sting's going to get back in. Is Sting and Luger going to get back in?
Yeah.
Could have been a nice cliffhanger. Yeah, I do praise them for the inventiveness, if you want to call it that, of using it. I was not disappointed in this sort of DQ finish like I was in others.
It feels very story-driven in this case, where in some other ones it's more of a, let's expressly put something in that just cuts off the storyline and you go...
Because we won another match, yeah.
Yeah, where this one feels very much like, no, that actually is moving this to a new stage in the story.
And it also, if people are rooting at this point for Sting and Luger because they're excited about the match, they can lose in a way where they can still preserve their friendship maybe later on, or at least they're really at Flair for moving forward.
Yeah, true.
And they can team up again.
Well, as long as this builds to a big climactic match between Sting and Luger, they'll be all worth it.
Yeah. Actually, I really liked this. I thought it was a good match. It is a little confusing. The rules are strange. but I think the three of them make the rules work really well. As Tony points out in the match, actually, nobody should actually want to tag out, so there's actually only 2 tags. Luger tags in himself off of Sting against Sting's will, and Flair tags out to Sting almost out of spite because he's absolutely frustrated trying to get anywhere fighting Luger and wants to send the friends against each other. I particularly liked how Sting and Luger avoided even getting to Flair's corner. Nice bit of storytelling there. Flair plays a great heel against both opponents, and all the taunting made sense. He's got a psychological weapon against both of them since they're friends, so he gets them to make stupid mistakes out of concern for each other. But there's a good sense of underlying tension, too, with Sting and Luger each wanting to win the match themselves. And there's a good payoff for that, with them finally fighting and escalating in violence against each other, until Luger is even choking his good friend. Yeah, and as I said, I really like the ending in concept and mostly in execution. The only thing that feels a little weird is the kind of happenstance Luger just accidentally knocking Patrick down. What was Flair's plan if that didn't happen? I guess is the question that bothers me on it. It feels like we should have seen that the Horsemen were ready or something like that.
They could have made it better or at least heightened it a little bit more if Flair was moving around the ring to try to get those tags. like when they're
yeah.
And they just had to keep on trying to move away from corners or, he's narrowly avoiding things. So it seems like he's still interacting. The only thing that may take away from their match, because everyone's going to be drawing attention to Flair. But if they hadn't done the knockout thing, that's what I would see him doing.
Mm-hmm.
Having listened to the video package again and explain the rules, they never address count out or DQ.
Right, yeah.
Which is a problem.
I had to extrapolate just from what happened in the match on the theoretical rules that I went over.
Like
on that
default,
part.
2 people are DQ'd, there's one that's not disqualified, therefore
he wins, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Overall, despite the kind of strange rules and the odd ending, I liked this one. And I appreciated the nods in the match and announcing the vast history between these characters. There's lots of terrific character work, and I had a lot of fun watching it despite its length.
From my memory, we've had 3 very long semi-main event matches with Sting on Starrcades.
Mm-hmm.
We had the one, 2 shows back with him and Hawk against Nasty Boys. And then we had the match where it's him and Dusty against the Road Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 3, this is the best one.
Okay.
Take that for what you will, I suppose.
Yeah.
one other theory that Flair would do to try to get back in is like if he went behind the ref and like, you know, pretended either Sting or Luger was nearby and he clapped his own hands. Yeah. And like, hey, let me in. Yeah.
That could have happened, yeah.
Heels love that move and faces never try it.
But in this case, it would actually make sense, where normally it makes no sense when they do it because they're close enough to tag anyway.
Right.
But in this case, someone would be close enough to tag but didn't want to, so he could fake a tag. Yeah. That would have been an interesting part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they could even make it comedic. After he does that, Luger gets eventually shoved out by the ref. Flair's like getting ready to do up the Sting, and Sting just starts doing stuff. Flair just runs around the thing and then tags tags Luger back in.
That would be the kind of jerk move that he would go for. Yeah. We go back to the announcers, who discuss the upcoming title match. Heenan says that Savage, with his injuries, has to be shaking in fear. Heenan says Flair has won the title 11 times, and now is going to be the 12th. Tony throws back to the original Starrcade and Flair's second title win, and then to the title match tonight, as Heenan gives us a good woo. So our final match is Randy Savage versus Ric Flair for Randy Savage's WCW World Heavyweight Championship. The referee for this match is Randy Anderson, reffing his only match of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was from Randy Eller the rest of the night. Randy Eller and Nick Patrick.
That's true.
Savage comes out with a new green Macho Man shirt and bandana instead of his jacket and hat from earlier. I don't like those as well. Savage grabs the microphone from Michael Buffer to give us an ooh yeah.
That was pretty good, yeah.
Buffer does the ring announcements, and Jimmy Hart appears to be managing Ric Flair now. Buffer says that Savage won the title at the greatest battle royale ever held, World War III. Well, it was certainly the most complicated. Look forward to World War III.
Oh, yeah.
That sounded like a threat.
It does, yeah, right. Look forward to World War III. Da-la.
We get a sign in the crowd that says, "Snap Flair like a Slim Jim."
Nice.
And then, what, eat him?
Yeah, I guess so. Also, I guess that person wasn't too confident in Sting or Luger.
Yeah, he seemed prepared for that.
Yeah, or they just made multiple signs, I guess.
Yeah. That sign would explain all the biting.
Yeah. Savage quickly gets a backslide for 2. His bandana slips off and he tears his shirt and throws it at Flair. DQ, match over. Just kidding.
All right. Thoughts?
That was short.
Technically, it's a foreign object.
There's a weird exception for if it's something you're wearing, though. It's often in wrestling rules.
Not with a boot.
Well, you take it off and then actually...
But he took it off and used it. See? I got you.
You did bring it into the ring legally.
Yeah, but same thing with the boot.
What if he's doing a kick and then it flew off his foot?
That's a good question. I don't know. Savage with early control with a flurry of punches as we see Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff standing on the ramp wearing a neck brace. The Horseman pile drove him on the cement floor not so long ago. Flair tries for a quick figure 4, but Savage kicks him away. Savage counters a cheap shot with more punches and throws Flair to the corner, and Flair flips out over the turnbuckle to the apron to the floor. I love that spot, but actually I've just thought, shouldn't that be a DQ? I mean, he did an over-the-top rope to the floor.
There is a break there, so I think that's the exception.
I guess so. If you land on the apron first, it doesn't count, I guess. Okay.
Because at that point, you're knocking him from the apron to the floor.
True, yeah.
Which is perfectly fine.
Oh, I thought no DQs for the first 5 minutes.
There you go. Security Chief Doug Dillinger makes Orndorff leave, and Flair counters a Savage top rope axe handle to the floor with a gut punch, then uses the barricade and post against Savage's bad arm. Back in, Flair twists and strikes Savage's bad arm. Savage punches free with his good arm, but Flair gets a sleeper hold. Savage ducks to make him fall towards the ropes, but Flair catches himself. Savage gets a couple 2 counts off of a huge punch, and rapidly hits a back body drop and several clotheslines for more pin attempts. Jimmy Hart distracts Anderson, as Flair counters another top rope double axe handle. Hart throws Flair his megaphone behind Anderson's back, but Savage steals it and, very gently, hits Flair with it. Flair is bleeding. Macho hits the big elbow, but Hart is still arguing with Anderson. Horsemen Brian Pillman and Chris Benoit run out, but Savage throws Pillman into Benoit. Anderson spots Pillman and holds him down, but the other Anderson, Arn, runs in and hits Savage with a loaded punch. Randy Anderson turns around to see Flair pinning Savage, and that gets the 3 count to give Flair the win and the title. A horrifically bloody Ric Flair celebrates with the Horseman and Jimmy Hart, who is still, by the way, wearing a Luger jacket. I mean, I guess he wouldn't have had time to get a Flair jacket designed, but it feels a little weird that he kept that on. Pillman charmingly spits on a camera lens. Pillman whips Savage with the big gold belt, as Flair gets a towel to wipe off some of the blood. Arn stomps Savage, and Pillman flashes the Horseman sign in Savage's face. Flair and the Horseman leave a battered Savage unconscious in the ring, and Randy Anderson checks on him. Tony accidentally says, "The Macho Man is your winner." Whoops. Tony tells us that with Flair's medical condition at the moment, there will not be an interview, as he needs to get his wounds treated. Thoughts on this one?
Put yourself in the mindset of our poor referee.
Yeah.
He's being held and yelled at by a guy for it feels like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it takes a while.
You know, the match is like 6 minutes long. So he turns around. Not only is Randy Savage, who was last seen upright and fighting, unconscious, Ric Flair, who was perfectly clean or was covered in blood. You kind of wonder what the hell happened while his back was turned.
Oh my gosh, Jason Voorhees visited the arena. Yeah.
I like it, this match to a certain degree. I like that it does a lot of action sort of condensed into a small window of time. If only they had a way they got to cut time at some point earlier, maybe to make more time for this match. But, there's no choices there. There's a lot of good action there. I like that all the big spots are touched upon. There's definitely a match in fast forward. My problem is, like I said in my notes, just as it gets going, we get loads of interference, a blade job, and a screwy finish.
Mm-hmm.
So not only are they condensing what should be a 15, 20-minute match into what? How long is the match?
I thought it was 10 to 15 minutes, wasn't it?
8 minutes and 41 seconds.
Okay.
People are tired. They need to go home.
So they condense what should be a 15, 20-minute match into about 8 minutes, and it feels like there's too much going on. Because we have super long ref distraction, we have two different people coming out together, but at different points of the ring, so we can do the admittedly cool spot of throwing Pillman at Benoit.
Yeah.
But then Anderson has been waiting at the back, like behind a curtain, for a third person to interfere in this match. I get that they had to do a screwy finish to protect Savage, because at this point, he is obviously a big star for them. And then I get they want to sort of culminate how cheap Flair has been. But yeah, I feel like they could have cut 10 minutes from the previous match and added to this. I had a lengthy match to build off this more. They had plenty of ideas to fill out a match. They just truncated it so much to make it fit in the time that they had. It's good, but it could have been really good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently I thought it was longer. I was in denial that, we had the manager distracting the ref for like 80% of the match. I figured it was...
I feel like it, yeah.
But I have to give it to Randy punching Savage. It looked like a boxing match. And some of those cells, or I don't know if they were cells, some of it looked really good.
Yeah, he had some good punches. And
Looked like he was flattened.
Yeah.
And it was great. I enjoyed that. It's the first time I've ever seen, and again, I know we talk about blading, but it looked like Randy was the one that bladed Flair, rather than him doing it himself. I noticed that when he went over to him after knocking him down, he was over him and he looked like he was doing something, like wrenching his head or whatever, but I think that's when you don't see any blood on his head until Randy walks all the way away and does a jump. By that point, Flair his hair is red.
Interesting. I could see that being a possibility because Flair had the earlier match. They might have been nervous about it staying through two different matches or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm almost certain that he did the blading and he was messing with his head to get it to start.
It is very possible. It's rare that you blade someone else.
But it is done.
Yeah, it's just done, yeah.
That's what I noticed, and I was like, oh, I know what he's doing.
Yeah.
But, it's weird after so many years of Starrcades where, the mat was red. It was like a bloodbath. It's like forensic, murder scene.
85, I think it is.
I believe so. Every
match is a bloodbath. Yeah, including the one that actually should be a bloodbath.
And I'm not, a fan of it or anything, but, it's interesting to see it come back in certain circumstances.
Yeah, definitely.
The question for me, I think, on that is it necessary? Because Flair blades is bladed, 30 seconds before the match is over?
Yeah, true.
It feels really arbitrary that the only possible explanation is that he does not want to talk to anybody after the match. So he's like, this is worth it. I'm going to cut my forehead. I can go to the back and not talk to anybody.
Yeah.
You didn't want to be asked why it's only 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Didn't want Gene to ask him who the other lady that was supposed to be on his arm was going to be.
He still hasn't thought of an answer.
Still hasn't thought of another lady.
All I was going to say is it's worth the watch again to see Savage, I guess, blade. That shouldn't be what stood out in the match to me. That should be the definitive, the highlight of the match.
Mm-hmm.
That and there's just a couple of those punches, man.
Yeah, there's one in particular that he really gets a good wind up and just decks him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was a pretty fun match, if very much in a particular Flair pattern. Macho starts off hot, Flair takes control and works a body part, in this case the arm. Macho comes back and we go to a finish. It's kind of Flair 101, but it's a pattern that he uses because it generally works.
Mm-hmm.
There's some nice concepts here. I like Flair stopping himself from falling on the ropes when Macho escapes the sleeper, and Hart's throw of the megaphone to Flair was nice and smooth. Flair's arm work was good and makes sense in the story. If his opponent has a big bandaged limb, of course Ric Flair is going to go after it. Flair does seem to take extra care on some of his moves, some of the wrist locks and such. He moves a little slower than normal to avoid wrenching on the arm too much. I believe Savage's arm actually is hurt. So Flair seems to move a little slower on his wrist locks and such to avoid hurting Savage, but simultaneously nicely actually makes it look like he's taking his time to really lock the holds in hard.
Yeah.
So it does a nice cover there. The ending. The ending is way, way over the top. And there's no way that I can believe that the ref didn't notice all the craziness going on, especially since he actually holds Pillman down himself. If we were talking, Hart distracts Randy and Arn runs in, punches Savage once and gets out, that's fine. But this is 3 different guys charging in to try different attacks in rapid succession, and one literally falls right by the ref. Well, by the way, he's actively struggling with Flair's kinda sorta manager, which in and of itself could have been a DQ for Hart trying to shove past him to clearly interfere. This went way past suspension of disbelief. I don't mind Flair winning the title by underhanded means. He's Flair. That's what he does.
Yeah.
But this really should have been toned down a tad. The match is perfectly fine and very entertaining, with Macho and Flair being 2 outsized personalities that did their best to get the audience into it, but the ending is just way too much. It's just like, what do you think, like you said earlier, what do you think's going on behind you, Randy?
Yeah.
It's like thud, thud, crash, boom, punch.
Whereas, I think if it had another 10 minutes or so, they could have had, Pillman and Benoit trying to interfere and that go nowhere, and then the match resumes. And then Arn Anderson, that part happens.
Yeah, I could see that.
You could split
Distribute
that
it a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a casserole with whatever's left in the refrigerator. This goes in, this goes in, this goes in. Does anything left out? No. It's all going in there. And you're going to enjoy
definitely.
it.
How do you feel about Arn Anderson?
I love Arn Anderson.
Okay.
This is a kind of weird period of time where they sort of start hot-shotting the title around a lot.
Yeah.
It really starts basically in the post-World War III time, because they're coming off a pretty long Hogan title run. Coming off of this match, Savage will get a rematch on Nitro and win the title back. And yes, that match is in January.
Yeah.
Because of course it is. Which would lead to them wrestling again in February on pay-per-view.
Okay.
This thing is not ending anytime soon.
No.
Mm-mm.
Back to the announcers, and Heenan is all smiles. Heenan says, Flair did what he said he would do. He's world champ for the 12th time. Someone flings something over the announcers' heads, and Tony looks at it bemusedly as Dusty recaps Flair's night. Tony congratulates WCW on its win in the World Cup, and Flair on his world title win. He questions how Sting and Luger's friendship will develop, and notes that Hogan is going to make his return on Nitro. Heenan says he'll party with Flair and the Horsemen tonight, and gives woos while Tony closes up the show, and Starrcade 95 is done. Overall thoughts on Starrcade 95?
So it's definitely a tale of 2 very different segments. With the exception of referencing story, the first 7 matches on a 9-match show are pretty unrelated to everything.
Yeah.
They're all for the most part good matches, but you don't get a feeling of everything is building to one moment. Even on bad WCW shows, as we'll get to plenty of those later, they'll reference the world title match or whatever the big storyline of that show is throughout. So you always feel like it's going towards something.
Mm-hmm.
But again, other than sort of fading references to, Luger wrestled already, Sting's got to wrestle, it's kind of its own universe. This whole, 2/3 of the show is.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have basically 40 minutes, not counting intros and recaps, of here's all the important stuff now that we're done with everything else. And it's weirdly balanced because, again, 2/3 of that segment is now all one match, which is basically 3 matches. And then the final match is not even the longest match in the show. It's all about getting to this title match, and this title match is shorter than Alex Wright's match.
Yeah.
And then it's like, that doesn't feel like that's put together right.
Yeah, but it's Alex Wright. You want to keep him around.
Yeah.
Clearly. Interesting on the tournament part, I had a couple of interesting observations. I don't know if you noticed the same thing. So, first off, all the Japanese wrestlers that win, they don't actually hit a finisher or get a submission hold. They always win by some sort of roll-up and pin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They never get a definitive win of this person is definitely better than him. You can maybe argue the Otani one, because that's counter wrestling.
I would argue with the Otani one.
But it's part of a sequence.
It is.
So it's not like he counters out a pin and goes in like a brain buster and gets the win.
Right.
That doesn't take away from their victory. It's less impactful than you think it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that there's a real divide in a number of ways between, at this point, the mid-card wrestlers and the top-tier wrestlers. The top-tier wrestlers all wrestle matches that are less than 7 minutes long and win via their signature moves. The mid-card guys, 3 that lose, don't think they're made to look bad necessarily, but they don't. The way the match is booked, they don't get their big shining moment. Like Luger countering and his big move, Sting in the hold, and sabotaging the elbow. The only one that sort of breaks it is, in fact, Johnny B. Bad wins his match, because you have to have a 4th win.
But he wins by DQ.
Correct.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It'll get worse in later shows where they really differentiate the mid-card and the glass ceiling they talk about.
Yeah.
But there's a feeling on the show that the mid-card guys come out, wrestle longer matches. Their matches are 10, 11 minutes, 12 minutes long. But these have to be bad, which is shorter for a number of reasons. So they get to try and impress people, but they don't get necessarily the payoff of standing in victory and looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the top guys get to work less and get to win and get big cheers. And in the sense that would make you want to be a top guy, that's good. But in the sense that it feels like you can't get anywhere as a mid-card guy or a lower-card guy, it's kind of sad.
I think the only thing that kind of argues against that point, though, is that all 3 of the top guys that you referenced have other matches later in the night.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's maybe shorter, less because they're top guys and just want to have time to show off on this show, and more because, Sting and Luger are going to both be in the triangle match, which is, as we've noted, quite long and physically demanding. And then Savage is going to have his world title match, which maybe doesn't go as long.
I think if you combine Savage's 2 matches together, it's only a little longer than the Otani Guerrero match.
But Sting and Luger, I think, both have pretty lengthy performances tonight. So,
and I don't mean that in any way to disparage them for working less. But the way the show is booked,
it is interesting looking at it from the tournament perspective itself.
That's my point of view on that. Yeah, they get to win in big ways, whereas the mid-card guys either don't get to win or get to win in ways that don't really elevate them at all.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would have been better if they had saved the last cup match, or the tiebreaker or whatever, for after the triangle?
That'd be interesting.
Flair would get to rest, or whoever won the triangle would get to rest potentially, and then they would do the last match. But you might have someone still wrestling 2 matches in a row.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I don't know how that would affect the dynamics of the storyline.
One thing I would have done with the tournament is not a thing Bob would suggest necessarily, but I would have had Sting and Luger there because they are the 2 of the 4 biggest people in the company.
The Cannons.
I would have put them in a tag match.
You guys are trying to add tag matches?
I mean, I had 1.
What's going on?
There's 0 on this show.
There's 1. It's triangle match.
Ideally, what I would have done if I obviously had full control of this theoretical situation, for one thing, I wouldn't have had Hogan not in the show. It feels weird that he just literally takes vacation on their biggest show of the year.
Yeah.
Every now and sort of a lazy way of he's just too aggressive.
He was in the crowd.
Yeah.
Besides Hogan, there's one other thing that's really missing to make this a true competition between New Japan and WCW, which is that WCW's world champion is wrestling in the tournament. New Japan's is not.
Mm-hmm.
Great Muta is the world champion at this point in time, and he is not wrestling on the show or appearing in any way.
And we all would have loved to see Great Muta again, I'm sure. So
it feels like a kind of unintentionally insulting that New Japan doesn't send their world champion, their best guy, in this tournament that's supposed to be super important, apparently.
Yeah.
Don't hate me. I enjoyed the first segment of the show more than I liked the end.
Mm-hmm.
New Japan being there was just a nice change up from previous years. It showed cooperation. You got to see how many new faces. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wish they kept that direction. I not necessarily in Starrcade, but
yeah, I wouldn't have done another Starrcade like this, but it would have been good to have another show for sure.
Yeah.
And that may have been the intent. But I really enjoyed it. I was looking for Muta, although I didn't know that he was champion or anything like that. Even the commentary was a little bit better during that. I'm not counting all the stereotype and all that.
No, yeah,
crap.
obviously, conception.
There's a lot of good sides to it as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I was a little drained after the triangle match. The second half, even though it isn't the whole half, the second third, or whatever you want to call it, the last portion, the triangle match was drawn out. I mean, we have seen other matches on Starrcade that were, in my opinion, even though they might have been shorter, felt more drawn out than that match.
Yeah, that tag match with Sting and Hawk, for instance.
Yeah.
That felt longer.
Yeah.
Mr. T versus Kevin Sullivan felt like the longest 3 minutes in creation at times.
I like how it stood out from other Starrcades.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy that. And Randy Savage. Awesome.
Yeah.
Were you glad that he wrestled on this show as opposed to merely
Just showed up? Yes. Yes.
No, I totally see where you're coming from on that. The early portion of the show feels totally different than any other Starrcade that we've seen thus far.
Yeah.
There's performances that we've never gotten and a whole slew of performers that I've only seen on this show. There's some obviously like Liger that we've seen previously.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of the performers in those matches are like only people that we've seen on this show, and I'd like to see them again.
There's Kanemoto, Otani, and Tenzin.
Yeah, so 3 of the 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 3 of the 7 are people that we've never seen before, and that I liked. So
yeah, and Sasaki is only in one person in a tag match. Yeah.
And I also like that the first 2 matches, they were lengthy and they were fast. They're energetic. They built on each other. The third one tapered off a little bit, but still had something unique to offer. I guess when you go up in weight class, things slow down.
A little bit, yeah.
Usually.
No, that's just like for safety.
No, yeah, I know, yeah.
It was a great start, and I think that left a stronger impression on me than the finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that, definitely. Yeah, this was a very entertaining show. It's strange. There's next to no storyline content that affects anything outside this Starrcade until we hit the triangle match and world title match. But despite that, this was an easy show to get into and a really fun watch. The match content is just terrific for much of the night, and even some matches that don't quite hold up are actually still good fun. Some don't quite reach their potential or don't get quite enough time, but most are really great, and I came out of watching this with a few new performers I'd really like to look up so I can see more of their work. High quality performances, low story content. It's like the exact opposite of Starrcade 94.
Yeah.
The World Cup storyline, even if the announcers and wrestlers do constantly call it the USA versus Japan rather than WCW versus New Japan, is nicely done. I mean, I think all of us knew it was going for all 7 matches.
Yeah.
But they do a good job getting there, and there's quite a lot of tension over that, with the scoring going back and forth. Aside from maybe Savage's match, which has to end in his win for Sting's match to happen, I never felt like I knew from the start how any one match was going to go. I liked that the WCW wrestlers encouraged each other and called out each other's matches throughout the night. There was a real team atmosphere, and that provided a really nice contrast to the triangle match storyline that pitted Sting and Luger against each other after they fought on the same side through the World Cup. The Sting and Luger friendship angle was used very well here, with both doing a good job of setting up how they're sticking together despite people's criticisms, celebrating together after the World Cup win, showing concern for each other as each faced Flair, and finally struggling to maintain their friendship as they competed directly. The show leaves them in a really interesting place, with Luger having actively caused Sting's loss, but in a way that suggests that he was looking for sympathy from a friend, not actually trying to hurt Sting's chances. It's a strong story that works well, and I liked seeing it highlighted. I talked about this at the start, so I won't dwell on it, but there's way too much use of stereotypes about Japanese people on this show, both in terms of commentary and in the show's general plotline. Most notably, the bit between Sonny Ono and the Diamond Doll, which is just downright offensive. The stereotype comments and storyline elements were a big problem for the show and just keep coming up, though more often in the early matches. I just can't ignore them, though. They're a black mark on an otherwise good show. Other than that, the announce team was a highlight of the show. Dusty, Tony, and Heenan play off each other well and alternate between really good discussions that make useful insights about the matches and wrestlers and utterly hilarious bickering.
Mm-hmm.
Dusty and his wonderful Dustyisms, and Heenan's increasingly perplexed reactions to them had me in stitches, and Tony plays a very good straight man caught between the two. There's moments where he just breaks down laughing, and those were great.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear the three had a good time working together here. And when you're listening to three guys having fun talking about something, it's hard not to have fun yourself.
Hopefully.
Again, I can't just let the jokes about stereotypes slide, unfortunately, and those are a black mark on their performance. But there is enough fun content there to still make a net positive for the announce team, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, this was a really easy watch, with 2 good storylines, one self-contained, and a lot of great matches. I think I can recommend this one, but just be warned that there are some pretty uncomfortable moments in the mix.
I agree with pretty much what you said. I just wish they could have done more to bridge the 2 sections.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for in-ring action, but there's definitely a disconnect in the way it was put together.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can watch it for what it is. It's a bunch of really interesting matches, but it's not a fully cohesive unit, I would say. # need more Muda.
There you go.
There was plenty of aerobatics, but, hey, why not?
There's no mist.
Oh, sure.
That's one thing we absolutely missed. No pun intended.
Oh, Gal. Well, it's time to do Match of the Night and MVP. Al, you want to go first?
Okay, sure. So, there's a bunch of strong matches on the show. For me, I had to basically put down the matches that had a full beginning, middle, and end, and had the time to actually deliver. So, unfortunately, that excludes stuff like the Sting Sasaki match, and the Savage Tenzin match, and even the Luger Chono match. And so it really came down to me to one match that really stood out, has a flawed story, has worked really well, has the right amount of time to actually get things happen, and that would be Shinjiro Otani versus Eddie Guerrero.
I figured we were going there.
Yeah. And on that note, my MVP, based on the match itself and the fact that he had a pre-match promo, which helped, of all the people, he got to actually really first build up the fact that this tournament is supposed to be important, even if I don't necessarily believe it. He seems sincere about it being important to win, and important that he's part of it. And also the fact that after his loss, you can visibly tell that he's upset.
Mm-hmm.
He makes sure to be in the back of the frame, just really being upset at himself for losing. So my MVP is Eddie Guerrero.
Okay. All right, John?
No, Eddie did amazing. I think this is the first Starrcade we see him in, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed him there, and they did have a good storyline, or at least a snippet of one. Honestly, it's one of the better matches of the night, but I cannot tell you how happy I was to see Jushin Liger again.
Fair enough.
And so I'm probably going to choose that for my favorite match, because it unlike a large percentage of Starrcades, there's always a slow start, and we didn't have that this time. With Liger, he hardly ever wins that I'm aware of. So
in the States, anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So it was nice to see that was a strong start, and they hadn't ramped up the whole offensive train.
That's true, yeah. Hadn't had time yet, yeah.
Yeah. So as an initial impression that stuck with me throughout the entire, at least the first 7 matches, that would be my favorite match.
Okay.
And my MVP is going to be Dusty, because again, with those 7 matches, or all the matches, his quirkiness and interplay and everything. This is the first time announcing, and I loved every second of it. I'm like, why isn't he an announcer?
I knew you were going to love Dusty Rhodes announcing.
Oh yeah,
he's not an announcer in the shows that he's in. He should be announcing his own match as he's fighting. Like last Starrcade, Al picked an announcer because the show was just horrid. But
yeah,
this is still a great show. but it would not have been, I wouldn't have made so many pauses and reflected on what was actually happening in the ring if I didn't have to wade through all the craziness coming out of him. It lightened my mood. It was still commentary that made me think about what was going on. It made the entire show better.
All right. And
and one more thing before I forget about it.
Yep.
Sorry. This is not important. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Go ahead.
Possums are North America's only marsupial.
Okay.
Do.
Maybe Dusty would have understood the reference if they said playing marsupial.
Yeah.
My match of the night, I'm going to agree with you, Al. It is Eddie Guerrero versus Shinjiro Otani by a country mile. It was absolutely brilliant. Two performers at their very best, putting on a terrific show of technical ability, strength, and agility. I already very much enjoyed watching Guerrero, but this match made me really want to track down more from Otani, who impressed me greatly. There are other very good matches on this card. In fact, most of the card is very good, but some jaw-dropping moves in this match, combined with a solid work for the duration and a terrific edge-of-your-seat ending, made it pretty easily my match of the night. For my MVP, I'm going to give it to Luger.
All right.
Maybe I'm just glad to see him back, but he had a good night. He had a fun match against Chono, did a good job building up the angle with Sting, compliments to Sting on that too, of course.
Yeah.
Did great work on the apron and in the ring in the triangle match, and really brought the intensity to the portion of the match where he faced Sting. Sting is an important part of all that too, and is excellent. But Luger really showed how his drive to win was getting between him and his friend, and letting his dark side emerge even against Sting. So I thought he did a great job with some complex character work, and that earns him my MVP.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
And that wraps up our review of Starrcade 95. If you've enjoyed listening to us tonight, you can search for us on Twitter or Facebook as Let's Go to the Ring. Follow us for episode announcements and other show details, and share your own thoughts about the Starrcades as we go through. And please, if you've enjoyed this show, give us a nice review on iTunes and share the show through your favorite social media platforms to help others discover us. Many thanks to OSW Review for attendance and pay-per-view figures, and to Gina Trujillo for our logo. Join us next time for Starrcade 96, not your typical warm, fuzzy holiday special. Like any of the other Starrcades have been?
Yeah.
That is the official tagline, by the way.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, is that actually it?
Yes, it is.
I mean, I watched Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, and he didn't cut his forehead open during the final battle with the Martians, so that does stand out a little bit.
This is Bob Moore for Alec Pridgeon and John Mullins, signing off. Good night, everybody.
Happy wrestling.
Get some rest.
Actually, I'm going to fill my water before I start that up.
You won't teeter-totter.
Yeah. He's going to walk the light fandango to the kitchen.
Just hope Bobby doesn't slip and go butt over teacup.
Yeah. Do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Dusty.